Chapter 30. The Origin and History of the TODAS. I have now given the whole of the material which I have collected on the institutions of the TODAS. In describing these institutions I have discussed various general problems suggested by their nature. But I have said little about the points of resemblance or difference between the customs of the TODAS and those of other peoples either in India or elsewhere. It remains in this last chapter to see how far the evidence which I have given throws any light on the very difficult questions: who are the TODAS? How do they come to be living on the Nilgiri hills? The evidence which might be available for our inquiry is of three kinds: records of the TODAS in the past, traditions preserved by the TODAS, and, lastly, evidence derived from the comparative study of physical and psychical characters, language, beliefs, and institutions. The evidence coming under the first two heads is of the scantiest. Our earliest record of the TODAS is contained in a Portuguese manuscript now in the British Museum. It records the visit of a Portuguese priest named Finicio to the Nilgiri hills in 1602. This manuscript was partially translated and published by Thomas Whitehouse in a book dealing with the Syrian Church of Malabar, under the title, Lingerings of Light in a Dark Land. As the translation given by Whitehouse is incomplete, I had the manuscript retranslated, and it was then found that several interesting details had been omitted, and that there were several errors in the translation. The new translation is given on pages -730. The account given by Finicio is very superficial, being the result of only 2 days' intercourse. But it is sufficient to show that there has probably been little change in the TODAS and their surroundings in the 3 centuries which elapsed between his visit and mine. I have referred in the general body of the work to several of the points in which his account either corroborates or differs from my own. Perhaps the most important feature of his story is that it shows the relation between the TODAS and Bodegas 3 centuries ago to have been very much what it is at the present day. And shows clearly that this relation between the two tribes is of longer standing than has usually been supposed. Finicio's account is, however, so brief and superficial that it helps us little in our search for evidence on the evolution of Toda society. We know from it that the institution of the Ti was in existence, and the scanty evidence goes to show that the life of the Palal was much what it is now. But there is nothing to tell us whether the ritual had then reached the high pitch of development which it now shows, nothing to tell us whether since that time there has been development or degeneration. From 1602 to 1812 we have, so far as I am aware, no record of the TODAS. In the latter year William Keyes, Assistant Revenue Surveyor, reported the existence of the TODAS, or Thothhavers, and other tribes in a letter to the Collector of Coimbatore. His account gives little information about the TODAS, except that they kept buffaloes and held it a sacred and inviolable custom to keep their heads uncovered. In 1819 a subscriber wrote an account of the Nilgiri tribes which was published in the Madras Courier. Beyond a description of their appearance, the only information given about the TODAS or Todavis is that it is against the custom to wear either turban or sandal, that they permit hair and beard to grow long, and that the Bodegas pay a few handfuls of grain from each field as acknowledgement that they received their land from the TODAS. In 1820 Lieutenant Macpherson reported the practices of polyandry and infanticide, and in the following year Captain B. S. Ward described the marriage customs more fully, and gave some account of the dairies and priesthood. In 1826 the Rev. James Hoff addressed a number of letters to the Bengal Hurkaru, giving an account of the Nilgiris and their inhabitants, and these letters were republished in a book in 1829. A more elaborate and most excellent account of the TODAS was given by Captain Harkness in 1832, in a work entitled A Description of a Singular Aboriginal Race Inhabiting the Summit of the Nilgiri Hills. And since that time very many of those who have visited the Nilgiri Hills have had something to say about the TODAS and their ways. As I have already pointed out, these records from the earlier part of last century differ but little from my own, and do not furnish us with any evidence that Toda customs underwent any great change during that century. As regards the evidence from Toda tradition, we are in no better case. Several writers have stated that the Todas believe that they came to the Nilgiris from elsewhere, but whenever I made any inquiries on this point I was assured that they had always been on the Nilgiri hills. the first toda having been created on the Kundas in the manner already described. It seems most probable that those who have ascribed such traditions to the todas have been misled by the account of the Kamasadralam. These are the people who are believed to have been driven away from Kannadars by Quoten, c.p. The todas have a very sincere belief in the existence of these people, and when I showed one man the frontispiece in Marshall's book, representing a toda village and its inhabitants, something unfamiliar in the arrangement of the scene made the man think that it must be a picture of the Kamasadralam. Any toda who is asked whether there are other todas and where they live will at once think of the Kamasadralam and will tell of these people, and the story might easily be mistaken for a tradition of their origin. The todas are also said to believe in their descent from Raven, and I was told by one man that they were descended from the Pandavas, but I have little doubt that such beliefs are only recent additions to their mythology. In studying the origin and history of the todas we have thus no record earlier than 3 centuries ago, and no traditions of any value, and we are altogether thrown back on the evidence furnished by the manners and customs of the people, their language, and their physical characteristics. Though the manners and customs of the todas are in many ways unique, or very exceptional, there is a general resemblance between them and those comprised under the general title of Hinduism. And especially with such more popular customs as are described by Mr. Crook. The great development of the ritual aspect of religion, the importance of ceremonies connected with birth and death, the sacredness of the milk-giving animal, the nature of the system of kinship, the marriage regulations and many other features bear a general, and in some cases a close, resemblance to institutions found in India generally, or in certain parts of India. On the social side these resemblances are perhaps closer than on the religious side. The system of kinship is very similar to that of other parts of southern India, and, so far as my knowledge goes, to that of India generally. The marriage regulation that the children of brother and sister should marry is found throughout southern India and probably throughout the Dravidian population of India. The practice of polyandry probably exists scattered here and there throughout India, and has undoubtedly existed in recent times in Malabar. The practice of the Mokthadaiti union between man and woman has also close analogies in Malabar. On the religious side the high development of the dairy ritual, so far as I know, stands alone, but the customs connected with birth and death have many resemblances to practices followed in other parts of India. Though this resemblance is general only and usually breaks down on going into detail. Thus in Brahmanic ritual there are several ceremonies prescribed at different stages of pregnancy, and some Indian tribes or castes have pregnancy ceremonies peculiar to themselves. But I do not know of any tribe or caste except that of the todas in which giving a bow and arrow forms the essential feature of a pregnancy ceremony, though it is not uncommon for this weapon to play a part in marriage rites. And in Korg a little imitation bow and arrow is put into the hand of a newly born boy. Similarly, seclusion after childbirth is common in India, and in the Brahmanic ceremony of Jatakarma water is poured over the heads of mother and child by the priest. In some cases from Mysore, c.p. There is a still closer resemblance to Toda custom, but there are some features of the Toda ceremonial for which I can find no parallel. In many points, again, there are distinct resemblances between the practices of the Todas and the more popular customs of India. Thus the pounder, sieve and broom frequently play a part in the popular magic of India, as of other parts of the world, but I do not know of any parallel for their being regarded as especially the emblems of women, as they appear to be in Toda belief. It is perhaps in the funeral ceremonies that we find the largest number of resemblances between Toda custom and that of other parts of India. Thus, among those who cremate their dead, it is usual to have ceremonies some time after the cremation, and some have regarded the second funeral ceremony of the Todas, the so-called dry funeral, as the representative of the Sapindi ceremony of Orthodox Hinduism. Among several tribes fragments of bone are preserved after the cremation, which become the objects of further ceremonies. Thus, the Hos and Mundas preserve large fragments of bone, which are hung up in the house and are buried in an earthenware pot much later, after being taken in procession to every friend and relation of the deceased. Again, among the Soras of Madras fragments of bone are picked out from the ashes and covered over with a miniature hut. Animals are frequently killed at funerals throughout India, and among the Sauras, just mentioned, the animal is a buffalo, which is killed close to the stone on which its blood is smeared. Again, among the Khois a bullock is slain and the tail placed in the hand of the corpse. A funeral practice which is very widely spread in India is the breaking of a pot, and in some cases the pot so broken is one which has contained the water used to quench the fire. Among the Naikars and the Reddys of South India the body is bathed with water from an earthen pot, which is then dashed upon the ground, while in other places an earthen pot filled with water is carried round the body 3 times. After which the fire is lighted and later extinguished by water which runs from a perforation in the pot. The common Indian practice, according to Padfield, is for the chief mourner to throw a pot over his head behind him so that it is dashed in pieces. That the kindred should retire with averted faces from the place where the corpse is left is prescribed by Manu, and the custom of burning or burying face downwards is practiced by low caste people. The motive in this case being to prevent the evil spirit from escaping and troubling its neighbors. While there is thus a general resemblance between many of the manners and customs of the Todas and those existing in various parts of the Indian peninsula, there is one district which possesses customs and institutions which seem to stand in a much closer relation to those of the Todas than is the case elsewhere. The social and religious customs of the West Coast, and especially of Malabar, not only bear a general resemblance to the customs of the Todas, but this resemblance in some cases persists when followed into detail. The similarity would probably become still more obvious if we knew more of the customs of the less civilized inhabitants of this district of India. In going over the resemblances I will begin with those on the social side. The most characteristic feature of the social organization of the Todas is the institution of fraternal polyandry. The Nairs of Malabar have given their name to a different type of polyandry. But it is extremely doubtful whether the relations existing in recent times between Nair women and their consorts should be regarded as examples of polyandry. Nevertheless, there is undoubted evidence that true polyandry has existed in Malabar, and in the most definite examples known this has been of the fraternal type. From the report of the Malabar Marriage Commission, published in 1891, it is clear that, though polyandry is now extinct in North Malabar, it still persists in some districts of South Malabar. One witness before the commission stated that at one time polyandry was very prevalent in South Malabar, and that it was still the practice for a woman of the cameler or artisan caste to have 5 or 6 brothers as husbands. And the witness had known personally a woman in Calicut who was the wife of 5 brothers, spending a month at a time with each. Another witness stated that polyandry existed in some parts of Cochin, and in a few places in South Malabar. Another said that among the Tyans of North Malabar it was the custom for one man to marry a girl for all the brothers of the family. One of the names for marriage in Malabar is Uzum Paruka, which probably means marriage by turns. The Canassans or astrologers of Malabar proudly point out that, like the Pandavas, they used formerly to have one wife in common to several brothers, and that the custom is still observed by some. Polyandry is not the only marriage institution in which there is a resemblance between the Todas and the people of Malabar. The Mokthad veil of a Toda woman seems to be very much like the consort of a Nair woman, and when these consorts are, as they usually are, Nambutiris or Malabar Brahmins, i.e., belong to a different caste, the resemblance to the Mokthadite custom becomes very close. More important is the custom of giving a cloth as the essential marriage ceremony. The 2 chief features of a Toda marriage are the giving of a loincloth to the girl and the salutation of the girl's relatives by the husband. Similarly, the essential feature of the irregular union between man and woman is that the Mokthad veil gives a cloak to the woman. And the Bad Aga name by which the relation has previously been known is derived from this fact. The man is called the blanket man of the woman. Throughout the greater part of the Malabar coast the essential feature of the marriage ceremony is that the man gives a cloth to the woman. The Nairs have 2 marriage ceremonies, of which the later, or Sambandham, forms the actual alliance between man and woman. The ceremony of this marriage consists in giving a cloth, and various names for the ceremony, such as Muntakotukika, Vastradanam, Putavakota and Putamuri, all mean cloth giving. In South Malabar a marriage is dissolved by tearing up a cloth called kachcha, and among the Azavas, the actual wedding ceremony consists of the gift of a cloth. The act of giving clothing as part of the marriage ceremony is found generally throughout India, but it seems to be a much more prominent and essential feature of marriage in Malabar than elsewhere. Among the funeral ceremonies of the TODAS there is one in which a cloth is laid on the body of the deceased. The essential feature of this ceremony is that a cloth is given by a man belonging to the clan of the deceased to those who have married into the clan, the cloth being then placed on the corpse by the wives of these men. The whole ceremony seems to be essentially a transaction between clans which have intermarried and evidently stands in a close relation to the regulation of marriage. And it is therefore of great interest not only that a cloth should play so prominent a part, but also that the word used for the cloth which gives the name to the ceremony should be kach. The same word as is used sometimes in Malabar for the cloth so important in the marriage ceremonies. The resemblance between the TODAS and Nairs in this direction goes, however, one step further. Among the funeral ceremonies of the Nairs there is one called padavekuka, in which new cotton cloths are placed on the corpse by the senior members of the deceased's tarawad, corresponding to clan, followed by all the other members, sons-in-law, daughters-in-law, and other relatives. The details of the ceremony differ in the two communities. Among the Nairs the placing of cloths is the duty of a wide circle of relatives, but the resemblance between the customs is sufficiently close to make it highly probable that we have to do with two developments of one custom. The ceremony just described is not the only point in which the funeral rites of the TODAS resemble those of Malabar. The earthen pot which I have already mentioned plays a part in the rites of both Nairs and Nambutiris. By the Nairs the pot is carried 3 times round the pyre while the water leaks out through the holes, and on completing the 3rd round the pot is dashed on the ground close by the spot where the head of the corpse had lain. The Nambutiris burn their dead and bury the ashes 3 days later, and when the body is being burnt an earthen pot containing water is carried round the fire, and is then punctured and the water received into another vessel, from which it is thrown on the fire, and then the pot is smashed and thrown away. We have seen that according to Toda belief it is necessary that those who have not been through certain ceremonies in life must do so after death, and the same belief is entertained by the Nambutiris, who tie the tali at the funeral of an unmarried girl, just as the TODAS perform the Persipimi ceremony. The Nairs collect pieces of unburnt bones from the ashes 14 days after the cremation, but they either throw them into the nearest river or take them to some sacred place, thus following a frequent Indian practice. There is one feature of the Irvatpami ceremony of the TODAS which also suggests a possible link with Malabar, and this is the name, pulpuli, given to the artificial dairy used by the Tartharal. The Nairs of Malabar have a ceremony at the 9th month called Pulakudi, in which the woman drinks tamarind, puli, juice which has been poured over a knife by her brother. The Toda word for the sour taste is pulchaitai, derived from tamarind, and I have suggested that the name pulpuli may mean tamarind dairy, and be a survival of community between the Toda ceremony and that of Malabar. I have now enumerated a number of points in which there is a close resemblance between the customs of the TODAS and those of the people of Malabar. In some cases, as in that of the cloth ceremony of the funeral, the resemblance is so close that we seem almost bound to seek its explanation either in identity of origin or in borrowing. We may be confident that if there has been any borrowing from the inhabitants of Malabar, it has not been recent. And we may also be fairly confident that the physical barrier in the past must have prevented any but the most infrequent intercourse between the inhabitants of the Nilgiri Plateau and those of Malabar. If we attach any significance to the resemblances I have indicated, the conclusion seems almost inevitable that the TODAS at some time lived in Malabar and migrated to the Nilgiri hills. And it remains to inquire whether there are any other facts in favor of this view. On one line of evidence I cannot speak with any authority, but I strongly suspect that there is a very close resemblance between the Toda language and Malayalam. I think there is little doubt that the Toda language is much more nearly allied to Tamil than to Kannarese, and I believe that the contrary opinion of Dr. Pope was due to the inclusion in his material of many words borrowed by the Todas from their Kannarese-speaking neighbors, the Bodagas. Malayalam is closely allied to Tamil, differing from it chiefly in its disuse of the personal terminations of the verbs and in the large number of Sanskrit derivatives, and I should like to make the suggestion, for the consideration of Dravidian philologists, that there is a close resemblance between the Toda language and Malayalam, minus its Sanskrit derivatives. The Todas claim that their diviners, who, when in their frenzy, are believed to be inspired by the gods, speak the Malayalam language, some clans speaking a language which the Todas say is that of people they call Mandartsetapal, living in Malabar. I do not know whether the Toda claim is justified, but in any case the belief exists that the diviners speak the languages of Malabar, and that these are the languages of the gods. It is possible that in their beliefs concerning the language of the gods the Todas may be preserving a tradition of their mother tongue. And if it could be proved that the diviners actually speak the Malayalam language, the link with Malabar would be very materially strengthened. The Todas believe that their dead travel towards the west and are able to describe the paths by which they pass. Here, again, there is some reason to think that people may preserve in their beliefs about the passing to the next world a tradition of the route by which their ancestors traveled from a former home, and this may be so in the case of the Todas. Another fact linking the Todas with Malabar is the use of the tall pole called tawdry in the funeral ceremonies. This pole is procured for the Todas from the Malabar side of the hills by the Kurumbas, and I was told that suitable poles only grew in Malabar, and the pole is adorned with cowries which are also probably of Malabar origin. Other objects burnt at the funeral, such as the boxes called pet tea and the umbrella called maturquitter, are also procured from Malabar. The use of objects in funeral ceremonies which are procured from Malabar is suggestive, though, taken alone, it would have little significance. A fact which would perhaps be regarded by most as more important is that there is now a settlement of the Todas at Gudlur in the Waynad, on one of the routes from Malabar to the Nilgiris. It seems clear that at one time the settlement was larger than it is at present, and it is tempting to suppose that we have here evidence of the route of the Toda migration. There are, however, facts which make it improbable that this clue is of any value. If the villages about Gudlur had been survivals of the migration, they would almost certainly have been sacred villages, but it was quite clear that they had no sanctity whatever and were not even saluted when seen from a distance. Unfortunately, I did not visit Cavity, the only village which remains, and if I had done so I might have discovered some evidence of sanctity and antiquity, but from what I was told it is very unlikely that any such evidence exists. This absence of sanctity is further in agreement with the traditions of the Todas, who say that the settlement at Gudlur is recent. There are, however, other facts which point to an ancient connection of the Todas with this district. Some of the buffaloes of the most sacred and ancient Nadras Ti are said to have come from Peri Ti in the Waynad, and the Taradral, in many ways an exceptional Toda clan, are said to have their own future world or Amnadra at this place. It will thus be seen that, in addition to the points of similarity in custom and belief, there are definite facts pointing to connection with Malabar. And if we suppose that the Todas migrated from this district, we have next to conjecture the path by which they traveled. If any importance is attached to the belief in the paths taken by the dead, we should regard it as the most probable view that the Todas traveled over the Kundas, the two divisions of the people traveling by slightly different routes. The Toda tradition that men were created on the Kundas is perhaps in favor of this route, which would seem to correspond with the road to the Nilgiris known as the Sisipur Ghat. If, on the other hand, we attach importance to the settlement at Cavity, the route followed would be that through Gudlur. At the present time the latter road is far the easier of the two, and, if the Todas had traveled during the last few years, it would have been the natural road by which to come. But it does not appear that there was any essential difference in the difficulties of the two routes before the roads were made. The evidence in favor of either route is very scanty, but if the Todas came from Malabar it is probable that they came by one or other of these paths. There are two other districts which have some claim to be considered as possible places from which the Todas may have migrated, viz., Mysore and Coorg. The Todas regard with some reverence a Hindu temple at Nanjangkudi in Mysore, and visit it to pay vows, and there is little doubt that they have done this for a long time. Further, Nadras, one of the oldest and most sacred of the Toda villages, is close to the present road from Mysore and may have been near the most convenient route from Mysore in ancient times. I think, however, that, though not recent, the relations with the Hindu temple at Nanjang Kuti are not of very great antiquity, and I am inclined to ascribe the Toda reverence for it to their association with the Bodhigas, who almost certainly came from Mysore. I have not been able to find many parallels to Toda customs in Mysore. In one case, however, the resemblance is very close. Among the Galavalu of Mysore, a woman after delivery is turned out into a leaf or mat hut, about 200 yards from the village, and on the fourth day a woman of the village pours water over her. In this case the woman lives in the hut for 3 months, her husband also living in a special hut. Again, among the Kadu, or forest, Galas of Mysore, the mother and child remain in a small shed outside the village for 7 to 30 days. The other district which has customs especially resembling those of the Todas is Coorg. Among the people of Coorg, cloth-giving appears at one time to have formed the essential marriage ceremony, and there still exist what are called cloth marriages, in which a man becomes the husband of a woman merely by giving her a cloth. There is also some evidence that polyandry has been practiced in Coorg, and I have already referred to the resemblance between the Persipimi ceremony of the Todas and the Coorg custom of giving a little bow and arrow to a newly born boy. The bow is made of a stick of the castor oil plant, and for the arrow the leaf stalk of the same plant is used. In Coorg the imitation bow and arrow is put into the hand of the newly born child, but this custom is not widely removed from that of the Todas, in which the bow and arrow is put into the hand of the mother shortly before the child is born. The Todas know the people of Coorg, which they call Coorg, and have a tradition of an invasion of their hills by these people, but it is very improbable that there has been any direct borrowing. And it seems more likely that some of the customs of the Todas and Coorgs have had a common source. The resemblance with the customs of Coorg are perhaps more striking than with those of Mysore, and the former region is much more likely to have been influenced by Malabar than the latter. The links with Coorg do not weaken, and perhaps even strengthen, the conclusion that the Todas owe much to Malabar. If we accept provisionally the view that the Todas migrated to the Nilgiris from Malabar, we are next confronted with the problem as to whether they are directly derived from any of the races now living in that district. The most diverse views have been held by those who have considered the racial affinities of the Todas. Leaving on one side the conjectures of those who have supposed them to be Scythians, Druids, Romans, or Jews, we find that the Todas have been supposed by several writers to be of Aryan or Caucasic origin. The Cataphages grouped the Todas with the Ainus of northern Japan, and Keane follows him in putting the two peoples together, and regards both as witnesses to the widespread diffusion of Caucasic races in Asia. Deniker suggests that they belong to the Indo-Afghan race, with perhaps an admixture of the Assyroid race. Previous writers have found no special reason to link the customs of the Todas with those of Malabar, and, so far as I am aware, no one has considered how far the Todas may be of the same race as any of the inhabitants of this district. In considering this matter, we may anticipate that even if the Todas and any of the tribes or castes of Malabar had the same origin, marked differences would have been produced by the long sojourn of the former on the Nilgiri plateau. How long the Todas have been on the Nilgiri hills no one can say. But we may safely conclude that a very long time must have been necessary to produce the wide divergence in custom and belief which is found to separate them even from those other inhabitants of India whom they most closely resemble. If the Todas came from Malabar, they came from a country differing enormously in temperature and in general physical and climatic characters from the Nilgiri plateau. Life on the hills must almost certainly have altered the physical characters of the people. And it is perhaps now hopeless to expect that any exact resemblance would be found with the existing races of Malabar even if the Todas are an offshoot of one of them. Nevertheless, in comparing the physical measurements of the Todas, which we owe to Mr. Thurston, with those of various Malabar races taken by Mr. Fawcett, it would seem that the differences are not very great, and in the measurements to which anthropologists attach most importance, those of the head and nose, they are very slight. In the table on the following page I give the chief measurements in centimeters for Todas, Nairs, and Nambutiris. The average dimensions of the heads and noses of the Todas correspond very closely with those of the Nairs, and the differences from the Nambutiris are nowhere great. It must be remembered that the measurements on the Todas were taken by one observer, and those on the Nares and Nambutiris by another, and this may partly account for the large divergence in the case of the maxillozygomatic index, which is calculated from the bigoniac and bizygomatic measurements, in both of which there is considerable scope for differences between different observers. The only other measurements which show any decided divergence are the stature and the length from the middle finger to the patella, and the greater stature of the todas may well be the result of their more healthy environment. The cubit of the todas also differs very decidedly from that of the Nambutiris, though little longer than this dimension of the Nares. Todas: 182 Nares, 25 Nambutiris. Stature: 169.8, 165.6, 162.3. Span: 175.9, 175.1, 170.0. Chest: 82.0, 86, 83.7. Middle finger to patella: 12.0, 10.1, 10.5. Shoulders: 39.3, 40.0, 47. Left cubit: 47.0, 46.2, 44.2. Left hand. Length: 18.8, 18.5, 18.0. Left hand width: 8.1, 8.3, 7.8. Hips: 25.7, 26.0, 26.2. Left foot length: 25.0, 25.4, 24.5. Left foot width: 9.2, 8.8. Cephalic length: 19.4, 19.2, 19.2. Cephalic width: 14.2, 14.1, 14.6. Cephalic index: 73.3, 73.1, 76.3. Bigoniac: 9.6, 10.4, 10.6. Bizygomatic: 12.7, 13.1, 13.2. Maxillozygomatic index: 75.7, 81, 84. Nasal height: 4.7, 4.8, 4.9. Nasal width: 3.6, 3.6, 3.7. Nasal index: 76.6, 76.8, 75.5. We do not know the probable errors of these different groups of measurements. But the agreement between the Todas and the two castes of Malabar is so close as to suggest strongly a racial affinity between the three. The hairiness of the Toda is perhaps the feature in which he differs most obviously from the races of Malabar, while the robustness of his physique and general bearing are perhaps almost as striking. The latter qualities may be entirely due to his environment, to his free life in the comparatively bracing climate of the Nilgiris, and, so far as we know, the development of hair may have a similar cause. Of all the castes or tribes of Malabar, the Nambutiris perhaps shows the greatest number of resemblances to the customs of the Todas, and it is therefore interesting to note that Mr. Fawcett describes these people as the hairiest of all the races of Malabar and especially notes that one individual he examined was like a Toda. I am not competent to express a decided opinion on the amount of importance which is to be attached to the resemblance which is shown by the figures on p. But it seems to me that the facts before us give no grounds for separating the Todas racially from the two chief castes of Malabar. The identification of the Todas with Nares or Nambutiris would still leave their racial affinities somewhat indeterminate. The Nambutiris are often supposed to be Aryan invaders of Malabar, and, owing to the cause already mentioned, the Nairs are so largely of Nambutiri blood that, if the Nambutiris are Aryan, the Nairs must also be strongly Aryanized even if they were originally of pure Dravidian descent. If future research should show that the Todas are an offshoot of one of the races now existing in Malabar, and if any definite conclusion can be drawn as to the time during which they have been on the Nilgiri hills, physical anthropologists will be provided with a most interesting example of the influence of environment on the physical characters of a race. Few greater contrasts of environment could be found in a country than that existing between Malabar and the Nilgiris, and it is possible that the Todas may furnish a striking example of the influence of environment on physical characters. In endeavoring to link the Todas with Malabar, I have naturally dwelt on the points of resemblance rather than on the points of difference. The differences are, however, very great. The general manner of life of the two peoples is now wholly different, while on the religious side I may point to the wide prevalence of snake worship in Malabar, especially among the Nambutiris. The hypothesis that the Todas are derived from one or more of the races of Malabar would not be tenable for a moment except on the assumption that the migration took place very long ago, and that the culture of Malabar has undergone great changes since the migration. As to the length of time during which the Todas have been on the Nilgiris, we can only offer the vaguest surmises. We know that 3 centuries ago the Todas were living on the Nilgiris, apparently in much the same state as at the present day. The appearance of some of their sacred stones suggests great antiquity, especially the well-worn polished appearance of the Nerzomkers, which, if the accounts are right, are only rubbed a few times in the year. On the other hand, the history of Malabar is highly conjectural. The 2 great positive landmarks in its history are the beginning and end of the rule of the Perumal princes. The date of the first Perumal is put at about the time of Christ or somewhat later. And it is tempting to surmise that the Todas may have been driven or have retired from Malabar in consequence of the political changes which took place at this time. The last Perumal probably reigned about 1,000 years ago, but there does not appear to have been any political upheaval at the time, the last prince having his period of office prolonged beyond the usual 12 years. And having then divided his dominions among his family and retainers. If we assume that the Todas came from Malabar, the date of their migration would be of great interest in relation to the possibility of Christian or Jewish influences on the Toda religion. There are ancient settlements of both Christians and Jews in Malabar. Tradition assigns the starting point of the native Christian settlements in Malabar to St. Thomas. But, leaving this on one side, there seems to be no doubt that both Christians and Jews were well established in Malabar more than 1,000 years ago. An ancient document is still preserved by the Jews of Cochin, which was given to their leader by the Perumal of the day, and this document can be dated about 750 AD. A similar document preserved by the Nestorian Christians can be dated 774 AD. Figure 75, from Breeks, a cairn on the Nilgiri hills. If the Todas left Malabar at the beginning of the Perumal rule, Jewish or Christian influences can be excluded, but if at a later period such influences may have been present, though it is very improbable that they were important. For, unless the Todas have changed very much, they would have been very unlikely to have borrowed from religious settlers of an alien race. Still, in considering the strange resemblance between the Hebrew and Toda versions of the creation, this possible influence should be borne in mind. I have so far said nothing of the archaeological evidence which may possibly help in the settlement of the vexed questions which I have raised in the preceding pages. Our knowledge of the history of the Todas would be very materially advanced if we knew whether the cairns, barrows and other ancient remains which are found on the Nilgiri hills are Toda monuments. In the cairns and barrows there are found objects which suggest a Toda origin, such as figures of buffaloes with bells round their necks, c. 9, but the vast majority of the finds are utterly unlike anything now possessed by the Todas. They include pottery of many designs, the lids of the vessels being often adorned with the figures of animals. Many other animal figures have also been found, and though that of the buffalo often occurs, figures of the horse, c. 10, sheep, camel, elephant, leopard, pig, and low-country bullock with hump are all found. Such figures can only have been made by those well acquainted with the low country, and none of these animals are ever mentioned in Toda legends. Metal work is also found in the cairns and barrows. Bronze vases, basins and saucers, 1, 2, 3, iron razors, styles or pins, and daggers, 8, while iron spearheads, 4, 7, 13, are frequently met with. In addition to the more elaborate cairns, cromlechs and barrows found on the Nilgiri hills, Breeks, to whom we owe most of our knowledge on this subject, found what he took to be ancient examples of the asram or circle of stones within which the Toda buries the ashes of his dead at the end of the second funeral. In such asram in the district between Kotagiri and Quadradoni, Breeks found bronze bracelets and rings, iron spearheads, a chisel, a knife and an iron implement in something of the style found in Malabar and differing from those usually found in the cairns. Figure 76, various objects found in the Nilgiri cairns, taken from Breeks. Breeks points out that the characteristic feature of the cairns and barrows of the Nilgiris is the circle of stones, and that some consist of an insignificant circle hardly to be distinguished from the Toda asram. He often found it difficult to say whether a given monument was a cairn or an asram, so that it would appear that there are intermediate gradations between the more elaborate cairns or barrows containing the pottery and metal work and the simple Toda asram. From the amount of rust on the iron implements, however, Breeks concluded that there was a long interval of time between the most recent of the cairns and the oldest asram, but he points out that if the latter are really asram, they show that the Todas used at one time to bury such objects as iron spears. As regards the cairns, Breeks points out that though the figures of many animals occur in addition to that of the buffalo, most of the animals are so badly imitated that it is difficult to identify them. While the figures of the buffaloes are singularly characteristic and often very spirited. The only implements found by Breeks which might be agricultural were shears and sickles, 12, 5, and he recalls the kafkati burnt by the Todas with their dead, which is a curved knife, different, however, in shape from the sickles often found in the cairns. On the other hand, very few of the human figures found in the cairns resemble the Todas in any way. The women have the low country top knot instead of the Toda curls, and they carry chattis on their heads, which would never be done by a Toda woman at the present time, whatever she may have done in the past. Breeks himself inclined to the view that the cairns are Toda monuments. One objection which has been made to this view is that the Todas exhibit little or no interest in the cairns, and offer no objection to their excavation. I have already given reasons why this cannot be regarded as a conclusive argument against the Toda origin of the monuments. The Todas certainly identify the hills which possess stone circles with the abodes of their gods. And the absence of objections to the excavation may merely be due to the fact that they have no traditional injunctions against interference with these circles. In dealing with the religion of the Todas, I have advanced the view that the ritual and beliefs of the people furnish us with an example of a religion in a state of decadence. It seems probable that the Todas once had a religious cult of a distinctly higher order than that they now possess, and if I am right in supposing that the Todas came from Malabar, it might follow that they brought their highly developed religion with them, and that although certain features of the religion may have undergone great development, the general result of the long isolation has been to produce degeneration. The study of the religion suggests that we have in the Todas an example of a people who show us the remnants of a higher culture. If we could accept the view that the cairns, barrows, and cromlechs of the Nilgiri hills were the work of the ancestors of the Todas, we should have at once abundant further evidence that the Todas have degenerated from a higher culture. We should have an example of a people who once used, even if they did not make, pottery, showing artistic aptitudes of a fairly high order which they have now entirely lost. The Toda now procures his pottery from another race, and, so long as this is of the kind prescribed by custom, he is wholly indifferent to its aesthetic aspect. I doubt if there exists anywhere in the world a people so devoid of aesthetic arts, and if the Nilgiri monuments are the work of their ancestors, the movement backwards in this department of life must have been very great. It is easy to see how the Todas may have lost such arts, supposing that they once possessed them. The Toda now regards nearly every kind of manual labor as beneath his dignity, and if a people showing artistic skill in the adornment of the articles they use in everyday life should hand over the making of these articles to another race. It is fairly certain that the artistic side would suffer, and this is especially likely to happen when the artisans whose services are employed are such people as the TODAS. Assuming that such a transference took place, it is easy to understand the complete disappearance of art even higher than that which the contents of the monuments show. The use of the bow and arrow and the club in ceremonial furnishes us with another example of material objects which have wholly disappeared from the active life of the TODAS, and here again it is easy to see why the disappearance has taken place. For on the Nilgiris the TODAS have had no enemies, either human or feral. This disuse of weapons has indeed so obvious an explanation that it cannot be treated as an instance of degeneration, and while the origin of the cairns remains doubtful, the only evidence of degeneration of culture is shown by the religion. And though it seems to me that the evidence here, especially that derived from the nature of the prayers, is conclusive, it may not be so regarded by all. In the preceding lines I have put forward for consideration the tentative hypothesis that the TODAS may furnish us with an example of a people who once have possessed a higher culture of which some features have undergone degeneration. If we combine this hypothesis with that advanced earlier, that the TODAS came from Malabar, we may suppose that the TODAS brought the higher culture with them from this district, and if this were so, the original culture of the TODAS may have been on much the same general level as that of the dominant castes of Malabar at the present day. On this hypothesis, it seems to me most likely that in their new home the religion of the TODAS underwent a very special development, its ritual coming to center more and more round the buffalo. Because in their very simple environment this was the most accessible object of veneration. I think there is little doubt that the extraordinary development of the ritual of the dairy must have taken place since the TODAS have been on the Nilgiris. And, as I have already pointed out, it seems to me most probable that the degeneration of the religion has been largely a consequence of the extreme development of this ritual aspect of their religion. If we reject the view that the TODAS are representatives of one or more of the castes of Malabar whose institutions have in some ways degenerated during a long period of isolation, the most likely alternative view is that the TODAS are one of the hill tribes of the Western Ghats who have developed a higher culture than the rest in the very favorable environment provided by the Nilgiri Plateau. I have already referred to the resemblance between certain Toda customs and those of one such tribe, the Hill Aryans, who live in the hills in Travancore and on the Travancore-Cochin boundary. These people are fair, about 5 feet 6 inches in height, and frequently have aquiline noses. They inherit in the male line, and have an early marriage ceremony, followed by another in which cloths are presented to the bridegroom. After childbirth the woman lives in a shed for 16 days. They bury their dead, the earth being dug with the ceremony to which I have already alluded, and though we are not told that a cloth is laid on the corpse at the funeral ceremonies, Fawcett records the fact that a cloth is placed on the grave. There are thus several points of resemblance between their customs and those of the TODAS, and this resemblance extends in some measure to the physical appearance and suggests not only that they and the TODAS have been influenced by the same culture, but even that they are people of the same race. We are here, however, plunged almost entirely in the region of conjecture, and we must wait for further information before we consider whether such tribes as the Hill Aryans are representatives of the same race as the TODAS. Both having been driven from the plains of Malabar into their mountain fastnesses, or whether the TODAS and Aryans are two hill tribes of similar descent who have each been influenced by Malabar, of whom the TODAS have advanced more in culture, owing to their exceptionally favorable environment on the Nilgiri Plateau. The whole of this last chapter is, I am afraid, open to the charge of being highly conjectural. It has, however, seemed to me desirable to raise some of the problems suggested by the existence of the TODAS. In the settlement of these problems much further research is necessary, and I have somewhat reluctantly dealt so largely with the conjectural topics of the chapter, because they seem to point clearly to two lines of research in which further work is necessary. One is the archaeology of the Nilgiris, which would, I believe, now well repay further investigation. The other is a detailed inquiry into the more popular customs of Malabar and especially of its less known peoples, such as the Hill Aryans, of whom I have just written. It is in the hope that further interest may be awakened in these lines of inquiry that I have devoted so much space to the hypotheses and surmises of this final chapter. If further research should show that the Todas are derived from ancient races of Malabar, it is possible that the existence of this strange people may help to illuminate the many dark places which exist in our knowledge of the connection between the Aryan and Dravidian cultures. It is even possible that the Todas may give us a glimpse of what the culture of Malabar may have been before the introduction of Brahmanism, a culture from which many features would have disappeared, while others would have undergone special development. And, if this were the case, the complex dairy ritual of the Todas would be the most striking instance of the development, a development, however, carrying with it the germs of that degeneration from which the Toda religion now seems to be suffering. Popular Religion and Folklore of Northern India, London, 1896. C. F. Crook, Lock Sit, Volume 2. Pages 187 to 191. Dalton, Trans Ethnol. SOC, London, N.S., 1868, Volume 6, page 37. Fawcett, Jern. Anthrop, SOC, Bombay, 1888, Volume 1, page 249. Locke, CIT. Kane, India Antique, 1876, Volume 5, page 357. Kearns, Tribes of South India, page 51. The Hindu at Home, Madras, page 234. 4, 240. Crook, Lock Sit, Volume 1, page 269. Logan's Malabar Manual, Volume 1, page 141. See Malabar Marriage Commission and Wygram's Malabar Law and Custom, 2nd edition, Madras, 1900. Census of India, 1901, Volume 1, FAP, page 136. Ibid, page 142. Madras Governor Museum Bull, 3. Page 247. Ibid, page 70. Ibid, page 61. See also Du Bois, Hindu Manners, Customs, and Ceremonies, Oxford, 1899, page 17. Madras Museum Bull, 3. Page 242. C. F. Caldwell, A Comparative Grammar of the Dravidian or South Indian Family of Languages, 2nd edition, London, 1875, page 23. It is perhaps worth noting that at present only Taivalli diviners are reputed to speak Malayalam. Jern. Anthrop, SOC, Bombay, 1889, Volume 1, page 535. Mysore Census Report, 1901, PTI page 521. Histoire Générale de Races Humaines, Paris, 1889, Introduction, page 469. Ethnology, Cambridge, 1896, page 418. The Races of Man, London, 1900, page 412. In a paper which I have only seen since the above was written, see Arc de la Société Biole. 1905, T. Licks, page 123, M. Louis Lepic has called attention to the resemblance between Todas and Nares. He regards the Todas as pure or almost pure examples of one of the two races of which he believes the Dravidian population of India to be composed, the Nares being more mixed with the Negroid element, which forms the other component of the population according to M. Lepic. It must also be borne in mind that the figures of the Nambutiris and those of some of the Todas are based on the measurement of 25 individuals only in each case. Some of these measurements are based on the examination of 82 men, others are derived from 25 men only. The relations existing between Nair women and Nambutiri men must have brought about an approximation of the two Malabar castes in physical characters, even if they were originally of different ethnical origin. It is worth noting that they practice male descent, while the Nairs follow the Merrimacateum system of inheritance. I should much like to know the ratios between the lengths of different limb bones, such as those shown by the radiohumeral or tibiofemoral indices. The observations on the cubit and the distance from the middle finger to the patella suggest that considerable differences might be found between the Todas and the Malabar castes in these ratios. which do not seem to me to have yet received from the physical anthropologist the attention they deserve. It will be remembered that the TODAS claimed to have once possessed a spear which had belonged to their god, Quoten. C.P. The argument will hold equally well if the TODAS in their previous home had been accustomed to procure their pottery from others, but had when they reached the Nilgiris to rely solely on the Kodas for help in this direction. C.P. Locke, Cit. Appendices. Appendix I. I give here a translation of 2 extracts from Portuguese manuscripts preserved in the British Museum. The original spelling of the names of places and persons has been preserved and I have added some notes. I am indebted for the translation to Miss A. de Alberti. The mission of Todramala. This new mission of Todramala belongs to the College of Vapikata, and it seems necessary to give your Rev. An account thereof that you may be informed of what has been discovered, as well as of what still remains to be done. Vague rumors had reached the Lord Bishop Domfrco. Rose that in the interior of this Malabar, among some mountains, there dwelt a race of men descended from the ancient Christians of S. Thomas. In order to discover and open the way to them he sent from our seminary a Casanar and a Chamas, which means a priest and a deacon, who after traveling for more than 50 miles reached the summit of the mountain of Todramala. Here they came upon a race which appeared, in accordance with the rumor, to be of those who were driven from the territory of S. Tomi by the many wars in former times and scattered through these parts. They did not call it by that name, however, but pointing in the direction of S. Thomas, they said that certain men came thence, some of whom settled in those mountains, and others went further down, of whom they knew nothing. The Casimar thereupon took occasion to ingratiate himself with them, saying that those who settled lower down were his ancestors, and therefore they were all of one race, and they had come solely to visit them as their brethren and relations. This moved them to such love and pity that men, women, and children embraced and welcomed them with tears. They found no trace of Christianity in them. They had neither crosses nor books, though they said they had some once, but they were lost as those who could read had died out. They have no pagoda worship nor pagan ceremonies. On being questioned concerning their god they spoke of a bird, a father, and a son, from which it may be presumed that they had some notion of the blessed Trinity. They rejoiced to hear of the creation of the world and other discourses which the Casimar and the Chamas held with them. And they were very eager that they should remain with them a long while, but they could not do so, as their guide was very pressing that they should return. They are a somewhat white-skinned race and tall of stature. They grow long beards and wear their hair after the ancient Portuguese fashion, bushy on the head and falling on the shoulders behind. They have necessaries in abundance, namely, rice, some wheat, vegetables, and meat in great variety, both fowls and wild game, quantities of cattle, and so much milk that they cannot use it all and give it to the very cattle to drink. Many other things were related of their customs which I leave until more is known of them. Upon this information the Father Vice-Provincial, at the instance of the bishop, resolved to send thither a priest well acquainted with the Malabar tongue. And therefore he commissioned the father who was going to the residence of Calicut to inquire the easiest road and best season for this mission. He found that it was much nearer Calicut through the territory of the Samaran, and that the best time was the month of January, when, by the help of God, a father will set out with several Casimars, and of what occurs your Rev. Will be informed next year. The mission of Todamala. Last year your Rev. Received a brief account of a new mission destined for Todamala to a certain race dwelling in the interior of this country of Malabar, among rugged mountains, at a distance of 50 leagues or thereabouts. These were supposed to be descendants of the Christians of S. Thomas who had somehow drifted to those parts. Though last year the Bishop of Angamale, Dom Foucault Rose, sent a priest belonging to the Christians of S. Thomas, accompanied by a deacon and a good guide, to explore the land and acquire information concerning this race, they did not bring back such full and certain intelligence as was desired. Therefore the Lord Bishop asked our Vice-Provincial to send one of our fathers, and the choice fell upon Father Jacomo Finicio, who has known the people of Malabar for many years and is well acquainted with their language. The father set out from Calicut, where he resides, and whence the road is easiest, and with the assistance of good guides reached the desired destination, though at the cost of great labor and risk. Having acquired ample information, he returned to Calicut from Thodamala, and on his arrival wrote a letter to the vice-provincial, dated the 1st of April, 1603, giving him an account of his discoveries. Of which the following is a copy. Copy of a letter from Father Joachim Finicio to the vice-provincial of Calicut, 1st of April, 1603. Thanks be to God, I am returned from Thodamala, though with great labor and little satisfaction. For I did not find there what we hoped and were led to expect. And as the prosecution or abandonment of this mission depends upon it, I think it necessary to give you here a detailed account of all I discovered and endured. The road by Charti being impracticable on account of the wars which had broken out among the people, I was obliged to go by Manarekadam, and this was providential for us, it being the road taken by the Cassinar whom the bishop sent last year. It is 13 leagues from the shore of Tanner. So far the way was safe and easy, this being the territory of the Samarim, and in every village we met people who knew our Christian Erari, the nephew of the Samarim, who accompanied me. I was very glad of his company, because he offered it himself, and because he could speak Kannada, the language of the Badgas, neighbors of the TODAS. Before we reached Mararakate we had an interview with the chief ruler of the Samarim, who lives within 2 leagues. I gave him a palm leaf from Karnar, chief ruler of the Samarim, in which he bade him give me the men and assistance necessary for my journey to Thodamala, and to go with me himself if necessary. The ruler welcomed us with many compliments, but as regards the journey he made many difficulties, and not only he, but many others of that place said that the way was very long and full of wild and rugged mountains. That there were elephants and tigers, that it was very cold up there, and finally that there was a risk that some of us would die. The ruler wished to send 2 Nairs, who knew the way, with me, but they would not go for fear of falling sick, even though I would have paid them well. Finding that they made so many difficulties I pressed the Erari to return to Calicut with his people, as it was feared that they would fall sick upon the way, and I would go to Manarakeith and there provide myself with a guide and escort. This touched the Erari upon a point of honor, and he bade me not to speak of such a thing, for he was resolved to go, and his Nairs had all bound themselves by an oath to go likewise. The Erari had with him a Varzar, which is little less than a Brahmin, and he said to me, Father, if I die on the road, bury me where you will, it is of no consequence. I asked another young Nair if he wished to go, and he replied, I will accompany your reverence while I have breath. Upon this we took leave of the ruler and went to Manarakeith, where we found the very Hatim who went with the Cassinar. However, the Erari thought it best to take another more trustworthy, who had relatives in the country. Here we were told that it was 6 Kannada leagues to Thodamala, which is 12 Malabar leagues, and that it would take 2 days and a half to get there. Everyone provided himself with clothes against the cold of Thodamala, and with provisions for the journey. Also with pots which the Nairs carried on their heads, not for want of coolies, but because the Nairs and Brahmins will not allow those of a different caste to touch the pots in which they cook their rice. The arms were left behind that the natives might not suppose that the people of Malabar had come to fight with them. Thus we set out cheerfully, and the first day, as we could not reach a village before night, we dined, and started between 8 and 9 in the morning, and marched quickly until evening that we might not be benighted in the thicket. For fear of the elephants, and yet our guide said we had only travelled 2 Kannada leagues. That day we crossed a sandy mountain. The second day we wished to start at dawn, but we met 15 or 16 men of that village coming by the road we were to pursue, all armed, and they told us that there were 3 elephants in the way. So we waited until 9 o'clock, and in the meantime the elephants sought their pasture. This second day we supped at the foot of a very high mountain over which our road lay, and as there was no village and there were elephants about, after supper we climbed part of the mountain and slept there. After midnight we climbed nearly all the rest of the mountain by moonlight, with great labor and fatigue. On reaching the summit other great mountains appeared, and others beyond them, at which we were all astounded, for some of them were so steep that we were obliged to descend in a sitting posture. When the Erari found himself on these mountains, he said that God was punishing him for his sins, and that going up and down such mountains would shorten their lives by 10 years. The Hatim, our guide, looking down from a mountain, said that merely looking down dazzled his eyes, and so said the Nares on other occasions in similar circumstances. But I could not restrain my laughter, and began singing hymns in Malabar against pagodas, whereupon the others laughed too, and joined in the hymns. It was now noon, and we had still another mountain to climb before reaching the village of the TODAS, neighbors of the TODAS, but we were so tired that we could go no further. We wished to dine, and there was very good cold water flowing from a mountain, but we had no fire. The Erari offered to go up with the Brahmin and to send us down a light. I would not suffer him to take so much trouble, nor was it necessary, for the Hatim, our guide, struck fire from 2 twigs, and thereupon everyone sat down to rest, cooking his rice meanwhile. When we had rested we climbed the mountain and reached the village of the TODAS. It is a village of 150 to 200 souls, called Meliunto. The Castaner is reported to have visited it. Here we found the chief of the TODAS and spoke with him. He promised to go and assemble the rest, that we might speak to them. In this village they have fowls, cows, goats, rice, lentils, mustard seed, garlic, and honey. They brought me some wheat in the husk, which was very difficult to remove, and therefore it seemed to me more like barley or some other grain than wheat. The Bodegos are like the Malabars, and they say there are 2 other villages like this in these mountains, 4, 5, and 6 leagues distant from each other. These trade with the TODAS and sell them rice, buying buffalo butter from them, which they carry to Manaracath for sale. The next day I wished to discourse to these Bodegos concerning our law. I showed them the pictures of Our Lady of St. Luke, telling them that the child was God, who became man to teach us his law and save us. I showed them a gilt Bible and told them that it was the book of our law, and as they all surrounded me, I went up into a high place and the Erari with me. I spoke in Malabar and the Erari interpreted in Kannada, which is their language. A bad Aga who understood Malabar could not contain himself, but came up to where I was and spoke to me in Topas. Then I taught him that the law given to us by the God-made man was contained in 10 commandments, and they all rejoiced at the 10 commandments and their explanation. Only at the 6th commandment the Topas Bad Aga represented to me that the Malabars also had many wives. I told him that this law was not the law of the Malabars, but of God, and that they did wrong in having many wives, whereupon he was satisfied. Finally I told him that I had not come to teach the TODAS only, but them also if they would accept this law. They replied that the law was very good, but they did not dare adopt it, neither could I live in these barren mountains, and I make no doubt that if a priest were there they would all be converted. While I was in this village of Melanteo the priest of the TODAS came thither, but he remained outside the village, for he may not touch a woman. I went to see him and found him seated on the ground with 7 or 8 others seated near him. He was a huge man, well proportioned, with a long beard and hair like a Nazarene falling on his shoulders, the front hair drawn back over his head, leaving his forehead uncovered. His dress was a shawl from the waist to the knees, and the rest of his body was naked. He held a sickle in his hand. When I had come up to him and sat down, he asked me how I was. I replied that I was well and all the better for meeting him, for it proved to me that God was my guide, since I had come from so far to see the TODAS and immediately met with their chief. He asked the purpose of my coming. I replied that I had come to see the TODAS, having heard that we were of the same race and laws, and that last year one of our people visited them and gave us a very good account of them. I asked him if they knew from whom they were descended. He said no, and thereupon would have taken leave of us. Then I said that it was not right to wish to leave us so soon, since we had come so far solely to visit them, and upon this he remained. Then I inquired of those around who he was, and what was his office. They replied that he was called Palam and was like the Belachaparo among the Malabars. Belachaparo is he who takes care of the pagoda, and sometimes the devil enters into him, and he trembles and rolls upon the ground, and answers questions put to him in the name of the pagoda. I asked if the TODAS had pagodas. They replied that they had a live buffalo cow for a pagoda, and they hung a bell round its neck, and the Palam offered it milk every day, and then let it loose in the fields to graze with the rest. And every month or thereabouts, the Palam seizes the buffalo by the horns and trembles, saying that the buffalo bids them change the pasture, and thereupon they change their place and pasture. By the milk and butter of this buffalo and that of its children and grandchildren, which already reach 120, this Palam is maintained. On this mountain where I was there were 100 TODAS, and they had 3 Palams between them, each having his buffalo for a pagoda. When the buffalo dies the TODAS assemble, choose one of these 100, tie the bell round its neck, and it becomes a pagoda. Besides the buffalo they have 300 pagodas to whom they also make offerings of milk. I asked him why he carried the sickle in his hand, and he replied that God commanded him to carry no other arm or stick but only that sickle. He used it to scratch his head, which was swarming with lice, and they could be seen crawling among his hair. I asked if he was married. He answered that he and his younger brother were married to the same woman, but as he might not touch a woman in the house she always lived with his brother, but he sent for her into the bush every week or so, when it was a fine day. And when he liked he sent for any of the wives of the TODAS whom he chose, and the husbands allowed it so long as he paid them. I asked if they had books and he said no, none of them can read or write. He also told me that they had a father whom God took up to heaven, body and soul, and the buffaloes looked up to heaven after him, and that was why they made offerings to the buffaloes. At last I gave him one of the looking glasses from Calicut, with which he was very pleased and said he would give it to his wife. Then I took leave of him, after showing him the pictures and Bible, at which he wondered. Besides this Palam they have another whom they call Pharaoh, who is present when they give the buffaloes salt water, and he trembles, bidding them give them drink, and they will give much milk, and grow fat, and give butter in plenty, and the next day we went to visit the villages of the TODAS. We climbed quite half a league above this village, and on reaching the summit nothing was visible on every side but mountains and valleys. All was desert without a single fruit or forest tree, excepting in an occasional damp place where there were a few forest trees. There are no palm trees or jacks in all these mountains, nor any fruit trees, as I have said. As we traversed these mountains and valleys, every now and then we saw a herd of buffaloes in the distance with a TODAS or 2 guarding them. In this way we met 4 or 5 TODAS and sent them to fetch the rest. As no women were visible, I promised one a looking glass if he would go and fetch them. He hastened away up a mountain and brought back 4 women, who remained at a distance through timidity and would not join the rest. I sent them word that they must approach if they wanted looking glasses, and then they came up. After this we went on for another half a league or more and came upon 2 TODAS huts at the foot of a mountain. They were like a large barrel half buried in the ground, or like a covered bier. They were 9 spans in length and the same in breadth, and 6 spans in the highest part. The hoops of the barrel were of thick reeds like Indian cane, bent into a hoop with both ends fixed in the ground. Pieces of wood from the bush were laid across these reeds and covered with grass. The front was made of stakes set on end, like organ pipes, with no other filling whatever. The door was a span and 4 inches wide, and 2 spans and an inch high, so that the Erari and myself could scarcely enter, and inside we had to kneel. There were 2 beds with grass mattresses on each side, and a small pit in the middle of the hut which was the fireplace. There was a little window on one side, a finger's length high and a span wide. Beside these houses was a pen for buffaloes, and close by another little house where they make the butter. They said the other houses were half a league distant from each other. 30 or 40 TODAS assembled. They are clothed in a large sheet with no other covering but a small loincloth 4 or 5 fingers wide. Their arms are long sticks smeared with butter. When new they look like strips of white paper at a distance, but they cure them and they turn black. They wear long beards, and rather long hair, but not so long as the Palam. It was 2 months since I had shaved or cut my hair, so that I looked like one of them, and they did not wonder at me as they did at the Castaner, who went there with no hair or beard. They never shave except when one of them dies. At a death they kill half of the dead man's buffaloes, and the other half goes to his heirs. If he has no buffaloes each person gives one, and half of them are killed and the rest are left. They burn the dead body, but it must be wrapped in a veil of pure silk, which they call a todapata, worth 5 or 6 phantoms, and if this is lacking they must wait for it, though it be for a year. In the meantime, in order to preserve the body they open it at the loins, take out the entrails, and cut off the occiput, then they place it in an arbor and dry it in the smoke. 2 brothers marry the same woman. She lives with the eldest at night, and with the youngest by day. Others have 2 or 3 wives. They do not eat fowls, cow's flesh, nor goat, and so they breed none of these. They do not eat buffalo's flesh, but only wild boar and venison. They eat no salt. They have no crops of any kind, and no occupation but the breeding of buffaloes, on whose milk and butter they live. They have no vassals, as was reported, on the contrary, they are subject and pay tribute to the bodega chiefs. When they eat they hold the rice in their left hand, take a lump of butter in the right, mix it with the rice, and so eat it. When their meal is finished they rub their hands together and wipe them on their hair, and so they all smell of butter. In color they resemble the Malabars, some whiter and some darker, they are generally moderately tall. Their ears are pierced or bored, not long like those of the Malabars, and some wear a silver circle in them like a ring. They wear black threads round their necks, and some have a large silver bead like a paternoster in front. I had a skein of black thread in my pocket and drew it out. A Thodar seeing it begged it of me earnestly 2 or 3 times. I told him that I must give it to the women, and I divided it in 4 and gave it to the 4 women above mentioned, and I gave them a looking-glass each, with which they were very delighted. The women were nothing but a long sheet like the men. They wrap it round them, throwing the right end over the left shoulder, and so cover themselves. Their hair hangs loose, but their faces are uncovered. I said that the women lower down wore bracelets, chains, and jewels on their arms and necks, and in their ears, and thereupon one of them uncovered her arm, on which she wore 4 large well-made copper bracelets. The sheet worn by both men and women is so filthy that it looks as if it would not burn if you put it on the fire, and if water were thrown on it, it would not penetrate. The men look after the house, cook the rice, do the milking, make the butter, and mind the buffaloes. The women do nothing but pound the rice, and sometimes mind the buffaloes in the absence of their husbands. In speaking with the Palam I asked him whether he or his wife cooked the rice. He replied that it was a great disgrace among them to allow the wife to cook the rice. The Thodars being thus assembled, I told them that, hearing that we were of the same race and law, I had come to visit them, and as I knew they had neither priest, book, nor law, I being a priest had come to teach them. I asked if they were glad to have me with them, and they replied that they rejoiced greatly at it. I asked if they would follow all my instructions, and they said they would. Then I asked if they would leave off adoring the buffalo and the 300 pagodas. They replied that they feared the buffaloes and pagodas would do them some harm. I said I would be answerable for it, and that I had more power than the pagodas. Then they said that if I would defend them they would willingly leave off adoring them. I asked if they would give up the custom of 2 brothers marrying 1 woman, and they said they would. I asked if they thought it right to give their wives to the Palam. An old man replied, "If it is the command of God, what can we do?" After this they asked me of their own accord to show them the pictures and the book. I did so, and they paid homage to them with great rejoicing. I also gave them a looking-glass each, and after discoursing and conversing with them for some time I asked them to give me 2 children to take away with me. They excused themselves, saying that they could not do so just then. I asked from whence they were descended, and one replied that he had heard that they came from the east, and some remained there while some settled lower down. They were amazed at seeing white men, and asked me to uncover my arms for them to look at. They were delighted with the Arari's red tunic and gold buttons, and velvet cap with the gold braid. At last I took leave of them, promising to return at some time during the year and remain with them longer. It did not seem to me necessary to delay any longer, nor to lay any foundation of our faith, as I do not think that the present is a suitable time for the company to undertake such out-of-the-way enterprises. Since it cannot attend to others of greater importance which are close at hand, for want of workers. The TODAS only number 1,000, and these are scattered about 4 mountains, 2 belonging to the Malabar, where there are 300. I went to one of these which belongs to the Samarin, another belonging to the Naik, where there are another 300, or a little over, and another belonging to another king, near Chardi, where there are another 300 or rather more. The whole distance being 8 Canara leagues, which are 16 in Malabar. And they live scattered about, every month or thereabouts they move their village. The whole district is uninhabited desert. The winds and climate are very cold. The water is excellent, but icy cold, it flows down from the mountains, it cannot be drunk at a draught because of the cold. One is obliged to pause, and after drinking one has to wait a while for the gums and teeth to get warm. The journey there and back is very laborious and can only be undertaken in January and February. From Manarkate upwards it is impossible to travel in a litter. On the return journey I was very fatigued and asked if it were possible to find men to carry me. I was told that there were plenty of men, but that it was impossible to be carried over these mountains, where one person alone could only climb up and down with great difficulty. Besides this, the Erari and all the rest were very pressing that I should return before any of us fell ill. The Erari said he was himself indisposed, as well as some of the others. They could not tell me anything concerning the Blessed Trinity. I asked them why they wore their hair loose, and a bad Aga replied that in the time of Karamparamatiai they killed the father of the TODAS, and they asked, "Who killed our father?" and they answered that God killed him. Whereupon they unbound their hair and said, "Never will we bind up our hair again until we have killed God, in revenge for our father, and, for the broken pots." On the return journey the Bade Gas showed us a shorter and less difficult road, which took us 2 days and a half, but saved going up and down the last steep mountains. However, there was no lack of mountains to climb, but they were not so difficult, though the first day we climbed down one which was very high and steep. We numbered 14 with the guides. There was a bodega village at the foot of the mountain, and seeing us they took us for a hostile band and fled into the bush. Our guides called to them not to fly, for we were men of peace who had been to visit the TODAS, whereupon they returned, and coming down we found them armed with their little lances, but we saw the women and children still hidden in the bush. A little further on we came upon 4 or 5 more houses, these people also fled into the bush, the women carrying the children on their backs. The second day we slept in the bush 2 leagues from Manarkate. There were tigers and elephants about, but God preserved us and we all reached Calicut in safety, thanks be to our Lord. Several afterwards fell sick, however, among whom was the Varial, who is still suffering. May God restore him, for he has promised me to become a Christian, and has already broken his own law as regards food, and Ad. MS 9853, pages 464-5, MS 25-26 volume, translation. Or Katner, a native priest of the Syrian Church. Ad. MS 9853, page 479, MS 40 volume, translation. In the translation given by Whitehouse the name of this priest is given as Ferreira. A member of the Erari or cowherd caste. Vaishya. Whitehouse suggests that this is Melur. I do not know the meaning of this. One caste of the Bodegas is called Toria. 7th. By the context this should be 100 buffalo cows. Evidently the Wursel. Appendix 2. Bibliography. 1812, Keyes, William. A topographical description of the Nilagiri Mountains, a letter printed in Griggs' Manual of the Nilgiri District, Appendix, page 48. 1819, a subscriber. Letter to the Madras Courier, February 23, 1819, reprinted in Griggs' Manual, Appendix, p. Lee. 1820, Macpherson, Evans. A letter reprinted in Griggs' Manual, Appendix, p. Lv. 1821, Ward, B. S. Geographical and Statistical Memoir of a Survey of the Nilgiri Mountains, printed in Griggs' Manual, Appendix, p. Lx. 1829, Hoff, James. Letters on the climate, inhabitants, productions, etc., of the Nilgiris or Blue Mountains of Coimbatore, South India. London. Letters previously published in the Bengal Hurkuru, 1826. 1829, Young, D.S. An account of the general and medical topography of the Nilgiris. Trans Medical and Physical SOC of Calcutta, Volume 4, page 36. 1832, Harkness, Henry. A description of a singular aboriginal race inhabiting the summit of the Nilgiri Hills. London. 1834, Jervis, H. Narrative of a Journey to the Falls of the Cavery, with an historical and descriptive account of the Nilgiri Hills. London. 1834, Mignon, Captain. Notes extracted from a private journal written during a tour through Malabar and among the Nilgiris. Bombay, American Mission Press. I have not been able to see a copy of this book. 1837, Schmid, Bernhard. An essay on the relationship of language and nations. Madras Journ. Lit. Ansai, Volume 5, page 133, on page 155 is a section on the dialect of the Todavars, the Aborigines of the Nilgiris. 1837, Barron, Richard. Views in India. London. Colored plates of Toda man and woman, and of the village of Kars. 1838, Birch, de Berg. Topographical Report on the Nilgiris. Madras Journ. Lit. Ansai, Volume 8, page 86. 1838, Schmid, Bernhard. Übersprache und Folkerverwandtschaft, Halle. On S. 27 is a section on the dialect of the Todas. 1842, Stevenson, Reverend Dr. A collection of words from the language of the Todas, the chief tribe of the Nilgiri Hills. Journ. Bombay Branch of Roy. Asiatic SOC, Volume 1, page 155. 1844, Muzzy, C.F. Account of the Nilgiri Hill Tribes. Madras Christian Instructor and Missionary Record, Madras, Volume 2, page 358. 1844, Anand Madras Spectator, August 31, 1844, page 559, an account of a Toda funeral. 1844-5. Congreve, H. The Descent of the Thodawars. Madras Spectator, 1844, pages 361, 655, 694, 768, 1845, pages 29, 37, 63. 1847, Congreve, H. The Antiquities of the Nilgiri Hills, including an inquiry into the descent of the Thodawars or Todas. Madras Journ. Lit. Ansai, Volume 14, page 77. 1848, Auchterlony. Geographical and Statistical Memoir of a Survey of the Nilgiri Mountains. Madras Journ. Lit. Ansai, 1848, Volume 15, page 1. 1849, Schmid, B. Remarks on the Origin and Languages of the Aborigines of the Nilgiris, suggested by the papers of Captain Congreve and the Reverend W. Taylor on the supposed Celto-Scythic antiquities in the south of India. Journ. Bombay Branch Roy. Asiatic SOC, Volume 3, Part 1, page 50. 1851, Ford, Sir Francis. Nilgiri Letters. Bombay, 1851. 1851, Burton, R.F., Goa and the Blue Mountains. London, 1851, pages 316 to 344. 1856, Caldwell, R. A Comparative Grammar of the Dravidian Languages. London, p. 503, Are the Nilgiri Todas Dravidians? Second edition, 1875, page 555. 1857, Metz, J. F. Die Volksstamm der Nilgiris. Basel. 1857-8. Metz, F. A vocabulary of the dialect spoken by the Todas of the Nilgiri Mountains. Madras Journ. Lit. N. Sci. N.S., Volume 1, pages 103, 131, and Volume 2, page 1. 1864, Metz, F. The tribe inhabiting the Nilgiri Hills, their social customs and religious rites, from the rough notes of a German missionary. Second enlarged edition, Mangalore. 1868, Short, J. An account of the tribes on the Nilgiris. Madras, republishes part of Auchterlonie's memoir. 1869, Short, J. An account of the hill tribes of the Nilgiris. Trans Ethnol. SOC, NS, Volume 7, page 230. 1870, King, W. Ross. The Aboriginal Tribes of the Nilgiri Hills. London, republished from Journal of Anthropology. 1873, Marshall, William E. A Phrenologist among the Todas. London, includes, A Brief Outline of the Grammar of the Toda Language, by the Rev. G. U. Pope. 1873, Breeks, James Wilkinson. An Account of the Primitive Tribes and Monuments of the Nilgiris. London. 1873, Burnell, C. Specimens of South Indian Dialects. Mangalore. 1873-5. De Cataphages. Études sur les Todas. Journal de Savants, Paris, 1873, page 729, 1874, pages 5 and 96, 1875, page 30. 1874, Walhouse, M. J. A Toda Dry Funeral. Indian Antiquary, Volume 3, page 93. A Toda, Green Funeral. Ibid, page 274. 1874, Kittle. On Some Dravidian Words. Indian Antiquary, Volume 3, page 205. 1877, Walhouse, M. J. Archaeological Notes. Indian Antiquary, Volume 6, page 41. 1880, Grigg, H. B. A Manual of the Nilgiri District in the Madras Presidency. Madras. 1894, Natisa Sastry, S. M. A New Study of the Todas. Madras Mail, August 28, 1894. 1895, Thurston, Edgar. The Todas of the Nilgiris. Bull. Madras Government Museum, Volume 1, page 141. 1901, Thurston, Edgar. Todas of the Nilgiris. Ibid, Volume 4, page 1. Ling, Catherine F. The Todas. Publication of the Church of England Zenana Missionary Society, London. 1904, Shamsul Olma Javanji Jamshedji Modi. A Few Notes on the Todas. Journ. Anthrop, SOC, Bombay, Volume 7, page 68. Appendix 3. List of Toda villages, not including Ti Mad. Village. Clan. Bad Aga name. Remarks. Akirsa Kodri. Nidrasi. Taranid Mand. Male funeral place. Arper. Pam. Ars. Kudr. Anekomand. Artel. Teridr. Aretelmand. Adamad. Teridr. Karadikotamand. Irgudr. Nadras. Nirkajamand. Urparskadr. Pydr. Yepikotamand. Idratol. Kudr. Idadelmand. Inikij. Pam. Betamand. Isharadr. Kars. Katamand. Yudi. Quadradoni. Male funeral place. Ivagar. Kudr. Kekadamand. In ruins. Kabudri. Pan. Tebikujamand. Male funeral place. Kakudri. Melgars. Kagadumand. Kalmathi. Kars. Kalmadamand. In ruins 10 years. Kalmad. Kars. Kulamand. In ruins. Kanagers. Kanagers. Devarmand. Itudmad. Kapthari. Keeger. Kunapmand. In ruins. Karers. Karager. Korea. Kujer. Koreamand. Kars. Kars. Candlemand. Itudmad. Karsh. Karsh. Kashtkadr. Kujer. Katakajamand. Unoccupied. Katark. Nadras. Kaitarkmand. Katakar. Quadradoni. Kodanadmand. Katal. Melgars. In ruins. Kavathar. Nidrasi. Kabitaramand. Cavity. Piger. In the Waynad. Keeger. Keeger. Karakajamand. Itudmad. Kabar. Nidrasi. Female funeral place. Kedar. Nadras. Kangatamand. In ruins. Kairad. Kujer. Karatamand. Karager. Karager. Kanajimand. Itudmad, also male funeral place. Kirkers. Tarager. Karakomand. Keshkar. Kanagers. Keshkar. Kars. Kakaramand. Also called Minikimand. Kidmad. Kidmad. Kursas. Melgars. Kujer. Kujer. Kengodumand. Satimad. Kayesh. Piger. Karamulamand. Kodrers. Piger. Hadamand. Koers. Karager. Kokimomand. In ruins. Kosber. Kujer. Kasubramand. Disused. Kasturi. Nadras. Kutdamad. Tarager. Kulamand. Kudagers. Nadras. Kombatukamand. Kudrager. Keeger. Kudakadamand. Kudramas. Tarager. Kudamomand. Kalomad. Kutanakam. Nadras. Kudinigamand. Kugwoon. Kujer. Disused. Quercy. Pan. Kalamand. Kulikal. Quadradoni. Kalikalmand. In ruins. Kolkodri. Nadras. Kalakadamand. In ruins. Kolmud. Kars. Malavijamand. Female funeral place. Kulthpulai. Nadras. Female funeral place. Kirkomut. Kujer. Female funeral place. Kurvas. Nadras. Kurudamand. Kusharf. Kusharf. Itudmad. Kudi. Piger. Anakandukulamand. Kudi. Kujer. Kujer. Kundakodumand. Itudmad. Kuzu. Kars. Kundatalmand. Kuzu. Kanagers. Near Kanagers, disused. Quarager. Keeger. Kugadadmand. Quatkash. Pam. Maranalamand. Female funeral place. Quirg. Kujer. Karangimand. Quadradoni. Quadradoni. Kajadanamand. Itudmad. Madoni. Pedrakars. Matsu. Pam. Manjathalmand. Madsu. Kudra. Disused. Marsners. Pam. Melgars. Melgars. Manjakelmand. Itudmad. Melkadr. Kudr. Mekadumand. Melur. Pedrakars. Medalliurmand. Merquadravulf. Canagers. Meroln. Pydr. Male funeral place. Merzodi. Melgars. Male funeral place. Mjoni. Kudr. Marlamand. Molkush. Kudr. Mokadmand. Mamanothi. Pydr. Female funeral place. Muellers. Nodgers. Funeral place for boys. Muthukar. Kudr. Disused. Nazmiatr. Kars. Aganadmand. Naders. Pan. Natanaramand. Nedradal. Teradr. Kilmand. In ruins. Nelkush. Nodgers. Nikadamand. In ruins. Naragudi. Nodgers. Nergulamand. Nerngadr. Kudr. Disused. Nerspam. Quadradoni. Nervenumand. In ruins. Nerspam. Nidrasi. Nadumand. In ruins. Neshquudr. Kedr. Nedikodumand. Nidrasi. Nidrasi. Nidamand. Itudmad. Nurkachi. Kudr. Nurkakamand. Nurshed. Pydr. Nursk. Pam. Female funeral place. Nadramad. Teradr. Nadumand. Nodgers. Nodgers. Mutanidmand. Itudmad. Nongarsi. Kars. Katerimand. In ruins. Belong to Pydr. Known. Melgars. Nerigulamand. Audr. Nodgers. Aganadmand. Ors. Teradr. Alakudalmand. Paidgar. Melgars. Kodapalmand. Also called Kodapal, CP. Pakakadr. Kars. Bagalkodumand. Paliners. Kudr. Pam. Pam. In ruins. Pamerkal. Pydr. Female funeral place. Pan. Pan. Onamand. Itudmad, often called one-mand. Pamuti. Nidrasi. Banatamand. Parskadi. Nidrasi. In ruins. Pathadr. Nodgers. Budankodamand. Pathmars. Pan. Betamand. Pedrakars. Pedrakars. Bidakelmand. Itudmad. Pigarsi. Karadr. Adamand. In ruins. Peavers. Kudr. Pekadr. Kedr. Osamand. Newmand. Paletquar. Kars. Adakoramand. Perg. Pan. Urajamand. Kalomad. Pertho. Nodgers. Paratitlemand. CP. Peshkamad. Pedrakars. Female funeral place. Pever. Teradr. Pivarmand. In ruins. Padadi. Nidrasi. Bendutamand. Pydr. Pydr. Waragudamand. Itudmad. Pith. Kudr. Male funeral place, near Kudr. Piney Wars. Nodgers. Pinapalamand. In ruins. Pershti. Nodgers. Bagulamand. Persush. Kudr. Belanjakajamand. Pishquasht. Canagers. Bikapadamand. Podsquar. Kars. Narigalamand. Or Pusquar. Poln. Kusharf. Pagulamand. Pomad. Pamand. Kars. In ruins 20 years, near Paletquar. Pongutter. Pedrakars. Posh. Melgars. Onakudamand. Podi. Pider. Paddymand. Potvali. Pider. Disused. Polkwater. Terriger. Olakadumand. Pulfcoln. Carriger. Bickelmand. Punmud. Quadradoni. Banakudamand. Female funeral place. Punamikatuni. Kudr. Female funeral place. Purati. Nodgers. Portamand. Puretimak. Melgars. Female funeral place. Perskutier. Pan. Poricodioramand. Pushtar. Terriger. Pataramand. Putamad. Kudr. Disused. Putol. Nodgers. Putalmand. Puvers. Kars. Amakoramand. Puvi. Pam. Putiapalamand. Male funeral place. Sulter. Pedrakars. Male funeral place. Sudvali. Pider. Male funeral place in the Waynad. Taktut. Pam. Place for small male funerals. Takneen. Canagers. Near Canagers. Tamak. Kudr. Tamagamand. Terriger. Terriger. Tarnardmand. Itudmad, and male funeral place. Terradakursi. Kars. Kavaikadamand. Male funeral place, also Kalomad. Tarkadr. Kudr. Turkadmand. Tavatkudr. Pider. Tavatakoramand. Tebmars. Terriger. Uratharamand. Tejtiri. Nodgers. Talapatharamand. Tiger. Kusharf. Dinadmand. Telgudr. Terriger. Telhodumand. Kalomad. Tigwar. Pider. Tukaramand. Tim. Pan. Male funeral place, possibly another name of Kabudri. Tothakir. Nodgers. Jagadevermand. In ruins. Tavalkan. Carriger. Tuvalkandamand. Tudrakwar. Kusharf. Todakaramand. Tulchovan. Pam. Male funeral place. Umgas. Kusharf. Yemikomand. Ushiger. Melgars. Kavamand. Male and female funeral place. Wengiger. Terriger. Yenikadamand. In ruins. Appendix 4. In the following list I give the botanical names of the plants or kinds of wood used by the Todas in their ordinary life or in their ceremonial. I owe these names to the kindness of Mr. Thurston and Mr. K. Rungachari. Anmol. Rubus mollucanus, L. Avalashki. Hediotis stylosa, Br. Kabudri. Euphorbia rothiana, Sprengel. Kadak or Kadakmal. Rosa lescanalciana, W and A. Kakar. Eragrostica nigra, Knees. Kakudri. Drahea volubilis, Benth. Kakudri. Gardneria ovata, Wall. Kakud. Mappia foetida, Myers. Carcacoi. Rhamnus whitei, W and A. Carnesi. Acronychia laurifolia, BL. Kers. Eugenia arnottiana, White. Caius. Litzia whiteiana, Benth. And HK, F. Kid. Probably Olea robusta. Kiri or Cursi. Amaranthus, speciosus. Cudi. Hydrocotyle asiatica, L. Couriers. Eugenia calophyllafolia, White. Curscat. Strobilanths. Species. Quadrici or Quadrici. Myrcene capitulata, Wall. Var. Lanceolata. Quagle. Polygonum rude, Myson. And P. chinense, L. Quatemali. Coriandrum sativum, L. Maine. Cinnamomum whitei, Myson. Melkudri. Piper sp. Moors. Michelia nilagirica, Zenk. Narc. Andropogon scunanthus, L. Pars, wood. Sideroxylin. Pars, leaves. Pentapenax lescanaltii, seam. Parscudi. Elignus latifolia, L. Passer. Dodania viscosa, L. Pathanmal. Solanum indicum, L. Paten. Panicum miliare, Lamp. Pelkitstmal. Rubus ellipticus, SM. Peshtinmal. Philoclames sp. Pavit. Pavetta creniflora, DC. Poder. Anaphyllus oblonga, DC. Pool. Ilex whiteiana, Wall. Pers. Rhododendron arboreum, SM, and Eleagnus latifolia. Putkimal. Rubus lasiocarpus, SM. Puv or puff. Sephora glauca, Lesh. Puvkai. Strobilanths. Species. Tacmol. Berberis aristata, DC. Tavat. Rhodomyrtus tomentosus, White. Tynecadri. Senecio corymbosus, Wall. Tib. Lucas zelanica, BR, and L. aspera, Sprengel. Terparicat. Strobilanths. Species. Tiveri. Atelosa candalii, W and A. Torsmich. Diospyros sp. Tori or Toramal. Berberis nepalensis, Sprengel. Tadr. Meliosma pungens, Wall. N.M. whitei, Planch. Twadri. Gerardinia heterophylla DC. Wadr. Aucklandra sp. Glossary. Only the more important Toda words used in this book are included in the glossary. The words are arranged in alphabetical order, neglecting the quantity or other value of the first vowel. The numbers refer to the pages on which fuller descriptions of the terms are given. A with circumflex R, P with circumflex RS, coagulated milk, curd, P. Agar, a stand in the dairy, P. Al, the deposit after the clarification of butter used as food, pages. A lug, a vessel of the Ti dairy, P. Amnr, the world of the dead, P. An Anna, elder brother, P. An ancient clothing of the Todas, pages. Anto, a dairy, P. Also a god, P. Arpatsnal or Arpasnal, a sacred day, P. Ars, house, P. Arser, buffaloes of the Kurdni Ti, P. Arsip, a salt-giving ceremony, P. Ashkarpimi, a food used on ceremonial occasions, P. Atur, buffaloes of the NRSTI, P. Av, Ava, mother, P. Azaram, the circle of stones in which the ashes are buried at a funeral, pages. Zramkr, the last part of the second funeral ceremony, pages. Epidorictors, a double hut, P. A male buffalo, p. Urkumthpimi or Urkumthidi, the ceremony of sacrificing a calf, p. Urnkar, sacrificial place at the Urkumthpimi ceremony, p. Airs, leaf. Urstidi, the act of making a leaf cup, pages. Urtatpun, a dairy vessel, p. Urtatmar, part of the dairy where the less sacred vessels stand, p. Urtatpur, the less sacred objects of the dairy, p. Itudpali, chief dairy, p. Itudmad, the chief village of a clan or other important village, pages. Etvainolkr, the first funeral ceremony, p. Ichil, a condition of impurity due to death or childbirth, pages. Ith, for the sake of, p. Urkoi, a vessel used at a ti dairy, p. Urtul, part of a hut containing the sleeping places, p. Mraikers, stones at certain villages, p. In, father, p. Ir, a female buffalo, p. Urkarmas or Urkarmas, the milking place, p. Urkartpun, Urkarithpun, milking vessel, p. Urnortidi, the offering of a buffalo calf to the ti, p. Or to another division of the clan, p. Runathnol, the day of migration, p. Irpalvusti, ceremony after the birth of a calf, p. Irsankati, a funeral ceremony, p. Urskithpnal, the day of migration, p. Cabin, iron. Kepkaiti, procedure in which the back is not turned to the contents of the dairy, p. Kachuthti, the cloth-giving ceremony at a funeral, p. Kar, the calf pen, p. Kafkati, knife burnt at the Zramkr, p. Kogers, the ti name of the cove, p. Kamukti, a salutation, p. Kaisvatiti, the rite of pouring out buttermilk for the palal, p. Kakuters, leaves of the kakut plant, p. Kakul, stick used in the panup ceremony, p. Kalkani, part of the dairy, p. Kalmopwithti, a salutation, pages. Kalomad, villages where women may not live, p. Kaltmak, the attendant on a palal, pages. Kalval, a path, p. Kamasralam, legendary TODAS, p. Kenavasner, the evil eye, p. Kar, a young calf, p. Karanpo, the calf house of a ti, p. Karpan, a milking vessel of the ti, p. Kars, stone. Karad, younger, p. Karvner, the mother's village, p. Karvnal or Karavnal, the day after a ceremony, pages. Katu, the wall surrounding a house or dairy, p. Kavulpav, a flower, p. Kr, funeral, relics, etc., p. Kaitang cursor, the wurseler of Nursi in Kurdni, p. Keepan, Kaipun, vessel to hold water, p. Kirk, the name of the waist string during the ordination ceremony, pages. Krtnr, a funeral place, p. Kevanarat, mode of bearing the right arm, pages. Kip, the broom, p. Kitten, bed on left-hand side of dairy, p. Ko, stake used at the Urkumthpimi sacrifice, p. Koglag, the name of the churning stick at the ti, p. Korup, one of the salt-giving ceremonies, p. Kobuntuni, the cloak of the palal, p. Kudipur, the wurseler of Pan, p. Also the sacred buffaloes of Pir, p. Kudi, a measure used for liquids corresponding to about 4 pints, p. Kr, horn, a division of a clan, pages. Kripali, a Tartar dairy, pages. Kudarpalakartmak, the dairyman of the Kripali, p. Krs Mani, the bells of the puner of the ti, p. Kravars, fireplace made of 4 stones, pages. Kujapal or Kujabel, family, p. Kuk, daughter, p. Kugar, a buffalo whose horns bend downwards, p. Kugvali, a sacred dairy of Ta with circumflex R, pages. Kugvalar, the buffaloes of the Kugvali, pages. Kudvalakartmak, the dairyman of the Kudvali, pages. Culator, buffaloes of the NRSTI, p. Kalinkars, a god, p. Kunesti, funeral laments, etc., pages. Kurub, a kurumba, p. Krupachidi, kurumba sorcery, p. Kush. KSH, structure for young calves, p. Cuter, floor, pages. Kuv, the perineal band, p. Kuvan or Kupan, a vessel used at the Kudvali of Ta with circumflex R, p. Quainer, Quanur, the Ti name of the penner, p. Quarkle, stick used at the Panup ceremony, p. Quorzum, name used in prayer, etc., pages. Quoy, the milking vessel of the Ti dairy, p. Quanir spring supplying water for a Ti dairy, p. Quoinorpit, a wand used by the Palal when milking, p. Quotars, the calf house, p. Quoten, a tu, or god, p. Quoto, a god, p. Quaten, seat, p. Quong, the ordinary bell, p. Quirg, korg, p. Mad, village, pages. Head, p. Madnal, sacred day of village, p. Madal, village people or clan, p. Math, the churning stick, p. Maj, buttermilk. Majpriv, a dairy vessel, p. Majvatithkoval, path reserved for women, p. Majvatvern, spot on which women receive buttermilk, p. Mare, a barren buffalo, p. Mani, the sacred bell, pages. Mankug, sister's daughter. Manmak, sister's son, pages. Martyr, the sacred buffaloes of the Kars clan, p. Marup, one of the salt-giving ceremonies, p. Mervainolk, the second funeral ceremony, pages. Mast, axe, pages. Machuni, children of brother and sister, pages. Mav, a bad aga, p. Also sambar. Mealkr, extra share. Metuan, bed on right-hand side of dairy, p. Merkelers, double hut, pages. Merskurser, the Wurseler of Enris, p. Methkudi, place of cremation, p. Miniapir, the Wurseler of care, pages. Mogul, forearm, also segment of forelimb of calf corresponding to metacarpus, p. Mogoi, a cubit, p. Mok, son, child, p. Mokthadaiti, Mokthad veil, mode of union between the sexes, p. Mokad veil, man who gives away a wife, p. Mondard Setapal, Toda name of a tribe living in the Waynad. More, the name of buttermilk at the Ti, p. Mukuriki, a ladle of the Ti dairy, p. Marol, privileged visitors to a Ti, p. Morpan, a dairy vessel used to hold buttermilk at the Ti, p. Morup, the ordinary salt-giving ceremony at the Ti, p. Mu, a name given to several kinds of dairy vessels, pages. Muley or mull, a name for various plants, p. Also used for thorns, p. And for the quills of a porcupine, p. Mulaniradatai, the ordination ceremony of the Palakartmak, p. Mun, mother's brother and wife's father, pages. Murn, the sieve, p. Mirthvici, anger, p. Naim or Noim, the council, pages. Nak, a 3-year-old calf, p. Nan, a young shoot, p. Nanmakud, a club, pages. Narthpimi, a game, p. Nashperthir, sacred buffaloes originally given to NRS, p. Nurkursh, middle room of a 3-roomed dairy, p. Nerval, intermediary, pages. Nei, clarified butter or ghi, p. Nursatidi, a salutation, p. Nurzatpol, name of the Kaltmak at the migration ceremony, p. Nurzonkers, stones of ceremonial importance, pages. Nipa, stream, p. Near, water, spring. Nrdibuden, the initial stages of the ordination of the Kultmak, p. Niradatai, the ordination ceremony, pages. Nursi, the fire stick, p. Nr, country, place. Sometimes used for ceremony. Nrkchi, ancestors of buffaloes, p. Nrachi, a ruler, pages. Nrved, younger brother, p. Noturtsi, a goddess, p. Ol or ol, man, husband, p. On, a sacred syllable uttered in the dairy ceremonial, p. On, a god, p. Paol, male relations in law, pages. Pakwar, a river. Also a god. Pali or Pathli, the dairy, p. Palakartmak. Pakrathmak, the dairyman, p. Palanal, sacred day of dairy, p. Palman, staff used in churning, p. Palo, the dairyman of a ti, pages. Panyap, one of the salt-giving ceremonies, p. Papan, a water vessel at the ti, p. Parkle, stick used at the panup ceremony, p. Parsers, milk leaves, p. Parser, buffaloes of the Kars ti, p. Prescarvan, vessel to hold butter, p. Pastir, the sacred buffaloes of the Tivalial, p. Padat, vessel to hold milk, p. Padatmar, part of the dairy where the more sacred vessels stand, p. Padatpur, the more sacred objects of the dairy, p. Pachersky, the husked grain pattern, samai, p. Paddle, one who has held the office palal, p. Patten, screen separating the two rooms of a ti dairy, p. Pav, threshold. Pavner Satiti, saluting the threshold, p. Per, a Tamil. Pelk, the lamp, p. Pelkoichidi, the ordination ceremony, p. Pelkatithwaskal, fireplace at a ti dairy used in lighting the lamp, p. Pem, a plateau or a gradual slope of a hill. Pen, butter, p. Penner, the string supporting the cove, pages. Pep, buttermilk used ceremonially, pages. Papurthti, a rite at the Kripali, p. Pepkaricha or Pepkarikti, the ceremony of making new pep, p. Pepkarmas, the milking place of a ti, p. Peptorsum, a dairy vessel of the ti, p. Peputi, the rite of drinking buttermilk at the ordinary dairy, p. Also the ceremonial drinking of buttermilk by buffaloes, p. Parather, buffaloes of the NRSTI, p. Perkursol, the lower stage in the office of Kultmak, p. Peril, an ordinary person, not ordained to any dairy office, p. Persisser, sacred buffaloes originally given to Melgars, p. Persin, the vessel in which milk is churned at the ti, p. Persinir, the sacred buffaloes of a ti, p. Parud, elder, p. Petuni, a piece of tuni, p. Pien, grandfather, p. Piav, grandmother, p. Pilikaran, sorcerers, p. Pilanortidi, offering of a ring, pages. Piliatpal, a sorcerer, p. Piliatvichi, sorcery, p. Pinipir, sacred buffaloes originally given to Pan, p. Pry, contributions from relatives by marriage, p. Pushtuni, the loincloth of the palal, p. Po, the conical and other sacred dairies, p. Pokartpal, the dairyman at Canners, p. Pavalkars, seat on which the palal sits, pages. Pavit, popit, a wand used by the palal when praying, pages. Pole, a calf of 1 to 2 years, p. Palm, a portion, a division of a clan, pages. Palmachok, a dairy vessel, p. Pawn, festival, pp. Up, p. See also p. Pankart Vaimak, boy who takes a leading part at the Ernortiti ceremony, p. Panal, festival day. Panup, a salt-giving ceremony at the ti, p. Pormonkirch, outer room of dairy, p. Prishdipper, the wurceler of Kars and Tie with circumflex r, p. Pukaruputkuli, the ornamented cloak, p. Pool, surroundings or outskirts, p. Puliol, relatives with whom marriage is prohibited, p. Punetkalval, path reserved for the dairyman, p. Puner, the ordinary buffaloes of a ti, p. Punners, a name for 2 days, p. Pursur, buffaloes of the Kars ti, p. Pursatpimi, the ceremony of giving a bow and arrow during pregnancy, p. Put, a stirring stick, p. Poothpep, the buttermilk obtained in the Pepkaricha ceremony, p. Putier, ordinary buffaloes, p. Putkali, the cloak, pages. Puzars, seclusion hut, p. Puzhulpami, the ceremony of throwing earth at a funeral, p. Satimad, a village of a special sanctity, p. Sedvedasmak, name of the woman in the Makthadaiti union, p. Tari, pole used in funeral ceremonies, p. Tarp, the loincloth, p. Taf, fern. Taggers, a chain. Tarsar, buffaloes of the Pan Ti, p. Tartharal, one of the 2 divisions of the Toda people, p. Tarapunkuti, whole used at the salt-giving ceremony at a Tartar village, p. Tarvali or Tarpali, the lowest grade of Tartar dairy, pages. Tarvalikartmak, the dairyman of the Tarvali, p. Tast, the bars in the opening of a pen, p. Tasmak, woman, wife, p. Teshk, a ring used in carrying dairy vessels, p. Taikirzi, a goddess, p. Tykes, stone or post at which a buffalo is killed at a funeral, p. Taipak, the Paikara river, p. Also a god, p. Tirtir, buffaloes of the Nrsti, p. Tvaliol, one of the chief divisions of the Toda people, p. Tek, basket, p. Churursti, custom of transferring wives, p. Tursamtpimi, a ceremony of childhood, p. Terzantarakaiti, the rite of putting curd or milk on the bell, p. Teshurst, a qualifying ceremony for the office palal, p. Teshner, the first stage of the ordination ceremony of the palal, p. Tu, god, p. Tukwoi, clay vessel made at the Panup ceremony, p. Tul, diviner, p. Tutatustki, ceremony of lighting a fire on a hill, p. Ti, the most sacred dairy institution of the Todas, pages. Tir, the buffaloes of the Ti, p. Also used of a special group of these buffaloes at the Nrsti, p. Tikulfmav, Badaga associated with a Ti, p. Ti Mad, a village or place belonging to a Ti, p. Torathwaskal, fireplace at a Ti dairy used to cook food, p. Torsum, the Ti name of the Mu, p. 2, the buffalo pen, p. Tr, a sacred tree, pages. Tukithkers, stone lifted as a sport, p. Tukular mani, a bell used in the funeral ceremonies, pages. Tun, a seat or bed, p. Tuni, the grey garment used by many dairymen, pages. Tunanortiti, offering of a tuni, pages. Tunatust kalpmak, the full kalpmak, pages. Turavali, the cooking pot of a Ti dairy, p. Turi, knife. Twaran, material made by the Todas, p. Yularworthkers, a wand, p. Ulkersh, inner room of dairy, p. Yunar, buffaloes of the Nrsti, p. Uppan, a vessel of the Ti dairy, p. Upamkudi. Upamkudi, whole used at the salt-giving ceremonies, p. Arvatpami, ceremony during pregnancy, p. Utkaran, people who apply certain magical or medical remedies, p. Utpal, medicine man, p. Wak, vessels burnt at the Zramkh, p. Warser, buffaloes of the Nrsti, p. and of the Pan Ti, p. Wask, grain pounder, p. Waskell, fireplace of 3 stones, pages. Wursel, the dairyman of the Wursely, pages. Wursely, a Tartar dairy, pages. Wurseler, the buffaloes of a Wursely, p. Index. The numbers in Clarendon type refer to the most important places where the subject is considered. A. Abduction of women. Adoption. Adultery. Aesthetic appreciation. Afterbirth. Age, telling. Alcohol. Ancestor worship. Ancestors, offerings to. Taboo on names of. Anniversary ceremony for the dead. Archaeology of Nilgiris. Aryans. Arrow. See also bow. Ashes, put on face. Astronomy. Atonement. Aunt, paternal. B. Bodegas. Barley. Basil, holy. Bastardy. Bathing, ceremonial. Bear. Bees. Begging. Bells, et seek. Bedding. Birch, Mr. Blood. Boar, wild. Bones, used in sorcery. As relics of dead. Borrowing, of customs. Of words. Bow and arrow, seek, -5, seek. Brahman. Brahmanism. Breeding of buffaloes. Breeks, Mr. J. W. Bribery. Bride price. Bronze. Broom. Buddha. Buffaloes, et seek. Creation of. Giving salt to. Killed at funerals. Migrations of. Offerings of. Ownership and inheritance of. Pedigrees of. Building. Burial, of children. Of afterbirth. Of ashes at funeral. Vestiges of. Burnell, Mr. A. C. Burton, Sir R. Butter. Clarification of. Buttermilk. Put on bell. C. Cairns. Caldwell, Bishop. Calendar. Canaries. Caste. Cat. Cat's cradle. Call. Caves. Celibacy. Census. Cephalic index. Charms, amulets. Chieftainship. Childbirth. Children. Funerals of. Chilies. Christianity. Churning, et seek. Churning stick. Cicatrices. See skin marks. Clans. Gods of. Cloth, giving at marriage. Cloth giving ceremony at funeral, et seek. Clothing. Ancient. Of dairyman, et seek. Of dead. Clubs. Coagulation of milk. See curd. Cochin. Coconuts. Colorblindness. Communion with the divine. Conception, miraculous. Cooking. Corg. Corroboration of evidence. Counsel. Of gods. Counting, method of. Cream. Creation, of buffaloes. Of man. Cremation. Crime. Crook, Mr. W. Cross. Crow. Curd. Cursing. D. Dairy, et seek. As funeral hut. Imitation. Offenses against. Orientation of. Purification of. Dairy vessels. Buried. Burnt at funeral. Imitation. Purification of. Dairyman, et seek. Gods as. Sanctity of. Dancing. Devil dash. Days, lucky. Sacred. Death, origin of. Deathbed. Debt. Deception. Defilement. Deification of mortals. Demon. Descent, female. Laws of. Disease. Divination. Division of labor. Divorce. Dog. Dowry. Dravidians. Dubois, the Abbé. Dung, buffalo, Edisik. Eagle. Ears, of sacrificed calf. Split, of calf. Ear piercing. Earth in ceremonial, Edisik. 343 Edisik. Earthworm. East. Eclipse, of sun. Of moon. 18. Eldest son, special portion 4. Elephant. Emblems. Endogamy. Evasion of ceremonial laws. Evil eye. Exchange of brother and sister. Exogamy. Expenses of ceremonial. Method of sharing. Expiation. F. Face, ceremony of uncovering a child's. Downwards at cremation. Family. Average size of, -7. Fasting. Fatherhood. Faucet, Mr. F. Feasts. Ferns. Fertility, -7. Finitio, Father Y. Fire ceremony. Making. Sanctity of. Special wood 4. Fire sticks. 5. Flesh, eating. Of Sambar. Floods. Flowers, telling time by. Telling age by. Folk tales. See also mythology. Food. For the dead. Restrictions on. Fords. Frenzy during divination. Fright, remedy for. Frog. Funeral ceremonies, etc. Future life. G. Gallbladder. Games. Genealogical method. Genealogies. Of buffaloes. Geographical position. GHI. Sea butter. Gifts, of buffaloes. Of money. God, a supreme. Gods. Hindu. Gourd. Government. Sea council. Great bear. Greetings. Sea salutations. Grig, Mr. H. B. Guimet Museum. H. Haddon, Dr. C. Hair, as funeral relic. Cutting. In magic. Methods of wearing. Tying, in ceremonial. Hairiness of TODAS. Half-breeds, existence of. Hand-burning, ceremony of, etc. Hair. Harkness, Captain H. Head, covering the. Hell. Hero worship. Hills, fire ceremony on. Relation of gods to, etc. Hinduism. Hindus, customs borrowed from. Objects borrowed from. Ho. Homicide. Honey. Hose. Hoff, Reverend J. House. Sea hut. Hunter, Sir W. W. Hut. Funeral, etc. Imitated in ceremony. Mud. Ownership of. Hypnotic condition. I. Idols. Illness. Images. Impurity. Incantations. Sea spells. Incest. Infant marriage. Infanticide. Inheritance. See also descent of magical powers. Of youngest son. Insects. Intelligence. Intermediaries. Invocation of deities. Iralas. Izavas. J. Jackal. Jaggery. Sea sugar. Jealousy. Jervis, Lieutenant H. Jews. Journey to the next world. Jupiter. K. Canissons. Keloid. Keys, Mr. W. Kidneys. Killing calf at sacrifice. Kin, salutations to. Duties of. Kinship. Kite, etc. Kneecap. Knife. Kois. Kodas. Kurumbas. L. Lameness. Laments, funeral, etc. Land, ownership of. Language. Leaf cup. Leeches. Left hand or side. Leverate. Life token. Light, reverence to. Limes, used in sorcery. Liver. Lizard. Luck. See days and omens. M. McPherson, Lieutenant. Magic. See sorcery. Malabar. Malayalam, -5. Manu. Marriage. After death. Communal. Marshal, Colonel. Measures. Medicine. Medicine men. Memorials of dead. Migrations of buffaloes. Milk, given to the dead. Restrictions on use of. Sanctity of. Water regarded as. Milking. Money, -6. Venetian. Monsoon. Months. Moon, new. Full. Figure in the. Morality. Morgan, Mr. L. Motherite. Morning, -6. 4 buffaloes. Mud house. Mundas. Murder. See homicide. Music. Muzzy, Reverend C. F. Mysore. Mythology. N. Nikers. Nails, of fingers, -9. Nares, etc. Nambutyrus. Name, change of. Giving. Names of bells, etc. Bows. Buffaloes. Dairies, etc. Personal. Sacred. Taboo on. Nasal index. Nicknames. 9. Numbers, sacred, etc. Uneven. See also 3, 5, 6, 7, 9, 16, 18. Numerals. O. Offerings. To Hindu gods. Omens. Omentum. Opium. Ordination, etc. Orientation, of houses, -4. Of dairies. Origin of TODAS. Ornaments. Man wears woman's. Auchterlony, Captain. P. Padfield, Mr. J. E. Pandavas. Panyas. Paramours. Pasturage. Paternity. See also fatherhood. Paths. Pedigrees. See genealogies. Personification, of dairy. Of bells, -7. Of forces of nature. Perumal's. Phallic worship. Phonetics. Physical characters of TODAS. Pigments. Pigs. Pleiades. Poetry. Polyandry, etc. Polygyny. Polynesia. Pope, Reverend G. U. -4. Population. Porcupine. Possession, of men by gods. Of buffaloes. Pot broken at funeral. Pounder, -2. Prayer, -9. Relation to spell. Pregnancy, ceremonies of, etc. Property. Prophecy. Propitiation. Punishment. Vicarious. Punnet, Mr. R. C. Purgatory. Purification, etc. See also dairy, dairy vessels, bathing. Purity. Q. Quarrels, -6. R. Rain, praying for. Rungachari, Mr. K. Rats. Red cloth. Pigments. Reddies. Relics, etc. Religion. Degeneration of. Relation to magic. Rib, creation of woman from. Rice, Mr. Lewis. Riddles. Right hand or side. Rings. Ritual. River gods. Rivers. S. Sabbath, -2. Sacrifice. Salt, etc. -4. Salutations. To buffaloes. To the dead. To jackal. To tiger. Sambar. Soras. Sastry, Mr. Natisa. Schmid, B. C. Seclusion, after childbirth. At puberty. During pregnancy. Servitude. 7. etc. Sexes, proportion of the. Shaving head. Of child. Sickle. Sieve. Sin. Sin-bearer. Serious. Sister's son. 6. 16. Skin color. Skin marks. Smallpox. Snake. Snake bite, cure for. Social organization. Sorcery. Of Iralas. Of Kurumbas. Spear. Spells. Spirits, malignant. Spleen. Springs, -8. Squirrel. Stars. Stone implement. Stone, lifting. Stones, in magic. Memorial. People turn to. Sacred. Succession. See descent. Suffocation of sacrificial animal. Sugar. Suicide. Sullivan, Mr. Sun. Survivals. Symbolism. Syphilis. T. Taboo. On names. Tail, cut. Tali, tying the. Tamarind. Tamil. Tattooing. Teak wood. Telugu. Thanksgiving. Thatch. Theft. Thorns, as needles. Thread bridge. 3. Seek. Seek, seek. Threshold, seek. Thurston, Mr. E. -7. Tiger. Time, telling by means of flowers. Tie-ins. Tobacco. Torres Straits. Totemism. Toys. Transmigration. Trees. Truthfulness, test of. Turban. Twins. Uganda. Umbilical cord. Umbrella. Uncle, maternal. Vedic sacrifice. Venus. Village. Ownership of. Sanctity of. Villages extinct. Vows, -6. W. Waynad. Wallhouse, Mr. M. J. -4. Ward, Captain B. S. Weapons. Wells. Sea Springs. Way. White House, Reverend Thomas. Widow. Widower. Wives, transference of, etc. Women, and magic. Exclusion from ceremonial. Intelligence. Position of. Relations with dairymen. Special paths for. Special work of. Wood, special for fires. Special for funeral pyre. Worms. Worship. Y. Yama. Youngest son, special portion 4. R. Clay & Sons, Ltd., Bredesty Hill, EC, and Bungay, Suffolk. Genealogical tables. Table of contents. I. 2. 3. 4. V. 6. 7. 8. 9. X. 11. 12. 13. 14. 15. 16. 17. 18. 19. XX. 21. 22. 23. 24. 25. 26. 27. 28. 29. Triple X. I. 2. 3. 4. Colophon. Availability. This ebook is for the use of anyone anywhere at no cost and with almost no restrictions whatsoever. You may copy it, give it away or reuse it under the terms of the Project Gutenberg license included with this ebook or online at. This ebook is produced by the online distributed proofreading team at. Scans for this book are available from the Internet Archive. Copy. Metadata. Title. The TODAS. Author. William House Rivers, 1864–1922. Info https://via org/viaf/180185332/. File generation date. October 7, 2023, 20:33 and 52 seconds Universal Time Coordinated. Language. English. Original publication date. Keywords. Toda, Indic people. Encoding. Revision history. June 9, 2012 started. External references. Project Gutenberg does not use active external links in its ebooks. The following URLs are shown purely for information. If so desired, you can copy and paste them into the address bar of your browser. Page. URL. https://archive.org/details/todas00 rivegook. https://archive.org/details/todas01 rivegook. https://archive. org/details/todasrivers00 rive. Corrections. The following corrections have been applied to the text. Page. Source. Correction. Edit distance. Than. Orientation. Orientation. Drink. Drinks. Diaryman. Dairyman. Diary. Dairy. Diaries. Dairies. Not in source. Not in source. Deleted. Reason. Season. Bicapatiment. Bicapatiment. Not in source. Nodgers. Nodgers. 1/0. Major. Major. 1/0. IR. IR. 1/0. UMA. UMA. 1/0. AMA. Ma. Not in source. Accompanying. Accompanying. The. Oligimi. Olidzimi. Doubtless. Doubtlessly. Elnicum. Elnicum. 1/0. Tikithkars. Tikithkars. Vesmes. These games. Not in source. Odger. Odger. 1/0. Akirsikodri. Akirsikodri. Ordinei. Ordinary.